Chapter 1. Prologue. Thor, Odin's son, my firstborn, my heir. So long entrusted with the mighty hammer Mjolnir, forged in the heart of a dying star. It's a worthy companion for a king. It could be a weapon for mass destruction, or it could be a tool to create, said Odin while I was just observing the other not-so-significant characters, the details Marvel put into the construction of Asgard and its glory. I have seen this so many times by now that I was no longer interested in the old man's dialogue. In fact, I had two thoughts about just skipping this section and directly jumping to where the action happened, however, no can do. I promised to enjoy the old classics without my impatience ruining the fun. If I did it once, then surely I'd do it with other movies as well, which I didn't want. I'm just a simple student who also happens to do part-time work on the side to keep living in this expensive city and make just enough money to survive outside of paying for my university. Sometimes, I wonder why I wasn't born into a wealthy family. That sure would be nice. However, which man doesn't? Outside of those who have a car and multiple chicks hovering around them, all due to their old money. Sigh, there I am again, thinking of things that do me no good. I bring nothing but depression my way, which will lead to me wasting my entire day again by listening to either sad songs or motivational videos. I'm not having it. I decided to spend my off day decently this time around. So there were only two things I could do: hang out with friends or explore the endless amount of entertainment media out there. The first one would have been my choice if not for all my friends being back in the town I came from. As for making new ones here in the city, I never tried, and I don't think my wallet can afford to hang out with them. The latter was much more economical. However, the challenge was deciding what kind of entertainment I am looking for. I am already feeling empty, and if I jerked off any more, my dick would fall off. I was tired of those agenda-driven games and movies. So I was surprised when I found an entire collection of things I will watch someday on my computer in some hidden pathway on my drive. If I could, then I surely would like to ask my past self why he downloaded these movies and shows if he wasn't planning on watching them. And even if he did, why hide them so deep? It's not like there was any black material in here he was trying to conceal. I'm afraid I don't know myself. And for my mental peace, I long ago stopped questioning why, even after having 4 terabytes of storage, I usually only have 10 gigabytes free on the best of days. So my decent fun day turned into a hunt for those hidden files my past self hid due to a lack of anything fun to do. That was last weekend, and now I plan to use all that hard work and watch all these old movies and shows. Almost everything was available on OTT platforms, yes, but I just get confused over what to watch there. This was much easier to handle. Not to mention, these old movies and shows were miles better than the garbage they put out nowadays. As expected, I started with Marvel. I used to be a big fan back then, but after She-Hulk, I lost all hope in humanity. There were many movies and shows here that I had actually watched before, but I just felt like revisiting them. And today, I was going with Thor, one of my favorite childhood heroes besides Iron Man and Spider-Man. Even after years, I could remember these movies almost perfectly. I used to watch almost all MCU movies like a man possessed when Marvel was dominating Hollywood. Arguably the best movie franchise outside of Harry Potter and Star Wars. Maybe Fast and Furious is up there somewhere. As the movie continued, I saw Thor attacking the frost giants and then getting banished by Odin, becoming unworthy to lift Mjolnir. Ah, Mjolnir, if there was one thing I wanted besides a girlfriend, only to tease my other single friends back then it had to be this hammer. Sigh, good times. Soon, Loki attacked Earth with the destroyer armor. Thor almost died, but by plot armor, he became worthy again, and the hammer came flying to him like my recent tax files. Boom, the hero started kicking the villain's ass. Good movie. Not the best in the lineup. I like Ragnarok way more than the other two, but this one also has its charm. Just as it was about to end, I saw something I couldn't remember in the movie. Stop, what are you doing? Get up, Loki shouted as he barely stopped Thor from falling off the Rainbow Bridge after Thor destroyed the section and caused a huge explosion. Wait a minute, isn't this the other way around? I paused the movie and pondered whether I remembered it wrong. But just as I was wondering, the video started once again. Huh, Thor, come back up. Odin appeared and tried to pull both Thor and Loki. Yes, I remember this happening, but Thor was holding Loki in the movie, not the other way around. Wait a minute, that doesn't matter. How come the video started again? I pursed my lips and hit the space bar again to pause it, but no luck. Hanged. A scowl appeared on my face. This old computer was another source of frustration in my life. I tried to move the mouse or close the window, but nothing. I was able to open another file, not sure which one it was, expecting to close the current movie when another one started in the player, but to my utter irritation, it started in the background while the current movie was still playing. Great, what music? Wait, is that the Game of Thrones theme? I have that show in here. Game of Thrones theme, so that's why I hit it. Brother, let go, Thor said to Loki, who was barely holding him from falling into outer space. This was wrong. When did this happen? And if that wasn't enough, the GOT theme was making this unnecessarily epic. I tried to stop the movie, but the computer was completely hanged. Frustrated, I turned to pull out the power. However, what I saw put me in a daze. The switch is off. Narrowing my eyes, I double-checked it, but the same result. This was one of those moments when people start questioning reality. I blinked and, just to make sure, pulled out the cable altogether. However, the music continued. Now a chill ran down my back. Slowly turning to the monitor, I saw sparks thundering out of it and the PC. Eyes wide, I just watched as fire caught my PC, and lightning dazzled around. No, Thor! Loki shouted as he saw Thor falling. I, on the other hand, was too stunned to even realize I was back to watching the damn movie when it should have been out of power. On top of that, it almost felt like the entire thing was about to blow up any second now. I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again, Thor said, looking right into me from the screen. And then, I heard a blast before everything went blank. 17 comments 0 vote. Chapter 2, Transmigrated. Letting out a growl at the uncomfortable place I found myself sleeping, I couldn't help but try to reach out for any warmth I could find. My hands and legs moved around to find the blanket, which I usually had lying somewhere nearby on the bed. This feeling was not new. The cold and chilly air always woke me up. I had a nasty habit of getting myself out of the blanket while sleeping, you see, but today, it felt extraordinarily cold. I moved around but couldn't find any warmth or comfort to prolong my sleep. Finally, though unwillingly, I opened my eyes. I shouldn't have. The first light assaulted me, almost making me blink, not to mention the white sheets of my bed today reflected more light than they ever had in my entire existence. Wait a minute, and that was when my mind caught up to reality. This ain't my bed, this is snow. Where the fuck am I? Where is my room? I jerked up, trying to get to my feet but immediately lost balance and fell back onto my butt. Dang, the snow did cushion my fall, but I hit something extremely hard while falling back down. Motherfuck, almost cursing, I clutched my head as pain rang inside me. It almost felt like my skull would break open. Okay, calm down, I shouted internally to myself, though doing that was extremely hard, seeing as I was in a complete wasteland filled with snow. Looking around, I noticed nothing but snow and trees. Where am I? If not for the bursting headache, I would love to take out my phone and post to others that I had traveled. At least something could come out of this ordeal. Wait, my phone. I realized and immediately searched my person to find the magical device that had enslaved modern humans. Nothing, I couldn't find it. Hell, what the hell was I even wearing? Looking down, I found myself in some sort of hard armor-like clothing. It was almost black with silver touches here and there, along with some sort of arm guards. Upon closer inspection, I could tell that they were one of those light leather armors from games and movies. What happened? My body refused to move. It felt foreign honestly, so I lay flat until at least my head stopped killing me. While I had some time in this predicament, I tried to recall what happened. How did I get here, and where is here, exactly? It took some time, but finally, it clicked, from watching Thor to my PC exploding right onto my face. If I survived, then this should be the hospital, shouldn't it? Once again, looking around, I didn't find any sexy nurse or fancy equipment. Hell, even if I could spot a building wall, I would have taken that as a sign that maybe I survived. But, isn't this place lacking in temperature for being hell? It can't be heaven. Aside from my personal track history, which makes me doubt that I'd go there, I once again couldn't seem to find those sexy angels most would consider heaven-worthy. I'm probably going mad, Talking nonsense when I have to check where the hell I am. Singing, I finally got up, or at least tried to. The foreign feeling came again. I lost balance and almost fell face first, but this time, I was ready. The first thing I noticed was the height difference. I was definitely much taller than I used to be. Second, I noticed the bloody place was freezing me from the inside out. I fucking need to build some fire. Shivering, I pressed down my uncomfortable senses and looked around to find wood or anything to build a fire, only to see an object of great significance lying on the ground, surely the same one that gave me this bump on my head. It dazzled slightly in the sunlight, while the excellent craftsmanship put a novel presence around the object, which I had seen countless times. Mjolnir, I blurted out, and like the hammer heard me, it slightly vibrated to my voice. Now things were really getting strange. But for me, it didn't matter. For any MCU fan, this was the time to find out whether they were worthy or not. Gulping, I took small steps forward, maintaining my balance to not fall again. After checking that no one was watching for some reason, I bent down and wrapped my hands around the hammer's handle. Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. I pulled the hammer with all my strength, almost doing a somersault in the attempt, but the hammer didn't resist at all. Hell, even the usual weight I was expecting wasn't there. It felt like a toy in terms of weight. I raised the hammer high while shouting, but nothing happened. Let alone the sky darkening and thunder roaring, I didn't even see so much as a spark of electricity. Well, of course, it's a bloody stage prop, I sighed, though sometimes, acting like a kid is fun. Again looking at the hammer, I had to say the thing was surprisingly realistic. It was light, like plastic, but looked very solid, giving me enough confidence that I might even put a dent in my landlord's head the next time he asked for rent. Shaking my head, I let it go. Now wasn't the time to play around. I had to figure out where the hell I was. Letting go of the hammer felt surprisingly hard for some reason. As it fell to the ground, which I have to say again acted like a real dense weapon, I felt like I had lost something. Again shaking my head, I turned around. I had way more important things to do besides debating this sudden unhealthy obsession I had developed with a hammer. However, just as I took a few steps, I realized something. This is a wild jungle, and I'm completely defenseless. This thought immediately made me stop. I once again turned back, looking at the hammer, which also had a magnetic pull effect on me. Maybe not the real deal, but it looks sturdy enough. Better have it than go empty-handed, I muttered. After convincing myself that I wasn't making things up just to get the hammer for myself and letting my inner fanboy win, I moved forward to pick up the hammer again, only to stop suddenly. Gods only know why, but my body betrayed me, and sneakily, my hand opened its palm toward the hammer, hoping for it to come flying at me. And nothing happened. Stop wasting time and get the damn thing already. I grumbled to myself and took it. Got to find where the hell I am now. 17 comments 0 vote. Chapter 3, A Different Body. Okay, this might sound crazy, but I think I've become Thor. I know, crazy, right? But how else am I supposed to explain all the changes that have happened to me? At first, I was too overwhelmed to notice. Waking up in an unknown place with my body completely out of whack, my mind wasn't exactly working at full capacity. It wasn't until after I finished playing around with Mjolnir that I finally started to realize the obvious differences in my body, something I really should have done the moment I woke up. But again, my brain was not braining back then. I'm pretty sure this isn't my body. For starters, the insane muscle mass I have now would put any gym bro I used to know to shame. My entire physique looks like it was sculpted out of marble, like a Greek god. Or, well, in this case, a Norse god. In short, I'm jacked beyond reason. My hair is long and blonde now, a stark contrast to the short, messy black hair I used to have. Even my voice is different. I haven't had the chance to see my face yet, no mirrors or reflective surfaces in sight, but the absence of my usual birthmarks is proof enough that this isn't the body I was born with. At first, I tried rationalizing it. Maybe I just lost my memory. Maybe I had been working out like crazy during that time. Hair can be dyed, and voices can change over time. It would explain why I woke up in the middle of nowhere, though not the fact that I'm clearly taller than before. Then again, without a measuring tape, that part could just be my imagination. When I couldn't come up with any definitive proof, I did what any reasonable man in my position would do, I pulled down my pants and checked. And, oh boy, what a sight it was. Giving my baseball bat a run for its money, this thing was definitely not my thing. Believe me, if there existed a situation to increase one's size, then I would know. Oh, the possibilities I have with this on my side. Case closed. This is definitely not my body. Pulling up my pants, I couldn't help but grin. If nothing else, at least there were some perks to this bizarre situation. It was yet another reason to get out of this desolate snow-covered forest. As for why I think I'm Thor, well, there are many reasons. From the uncanny similarities between my new body and Thor's to the presence of Mjolnir, it all added up. But the biggest reason, the memories of Thor slowly resurfacing in my mind, and the glowing system screen floating right in front of me. Thor template activated. The host shall have the power of Thor and beyond as he progresses through the system and earns points to upgrade one of 3 aspects of Thor by completing missions. Host attributes. Godly body, level 1. Mjolnir, level 1. Lightning, level 1. Base MCU Thor is 10 across all attributes. I could only gawk at the holographic screen. Now, I won't pretend I have no idea what's going on. I've read way too many fanfiction stories to not recognize a system when I see one. But to die, get reborn, and get a system of my own. What should I say? I'm honored. Sigh. At the very least, this confirms one thing, there's no way home for me. That thought took a while to settle in. And in that moment of uncertainty and frustration, I started noticing the changes in my mind, not just my body, but my thoughts as well. What will happen to mother and father? That was the first thought that popped into my head. And it should have been normal, if my parents hadn't died when I was 10. My uncle raised me. No, I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about Odin and Frigga. That was unsettling. My memories were still my own, but Thor's memories were dominant in my mind, trying to merge with mine. I needed to do something to break out of it. So, I did something I never thought I would do. I picked up Mjolnir and started hammering away at a poor tree. Believe me, this is not how I usually handle stress. But right now, my first instinct was to smash something with Mjolnir. And I was good at it. Though my strength was only at level 1, similar to when Thor lost his divine powers, sheer effort alone led to 6 trees falling before me. I felt like a beast. Never in my life have I felt this strong, and this was me without any of Thor's actual powers yet. Sigh, it took me some time to come to terms with everything. But once I did, I returned my attention to the system. If I needed to complete missions to unlock more of Thor's power, I should check what my first task was. First mission. Find out where you are. Ah, great, I was hoping the system would just tell me. If only Mjolnir had its full power so I could fly up and get a bird's eye view. But it looks like I'll have to upgrade it first. Base MCU Thor is level 10 across all 3 attributes according to the system. That means I'll need to complete 27 missions to reach his level. It's a long way to go. As I mused over what I should do next, my senses suddenly picked up something. Even though I was just a human right now, Thor's instincts were still sharp. My body tensed on its own, slipping into a battle stance that I recognized from Thor's memories. If muscle memory was a thing, this had to be it. Good thing gods work the same way in that regard, or I'd be in serious trouble. I just hoped that, if it came down to it, this body knew how to fight. The sound of footsteps grew louder, accompanied by haggard breathing. Tightening my grip on Mjolnir, I stayed vigilant until I finally spotted a person running toward me from deep within the woods. No, not a man, a boy. A teenager, about my age, well, my original age, anyway. He was dressed in black, his face pale and panicked as he ran straight toward me. But the moment he saw me, he skidded to a stop. Hope he understands English, or this is going to be a long one. Hello, I am Thor Odinson. Might I ask who you are? And while we're at it, where exactly are we? I asked, not even realizing I had referred to myself as Thor until after the words left my mouth. Something was definitely strange. My mind was my own, yet Thor's memories were overwhelming, seeping into my identity. Then again, with over 1,500 years worth of memories crammed into my head, maybe that was inevitable. The boy hesitated, clearly assessing me. He was unharmed, while I stood here holding a weapon. Naturally, he was wary. Yes, Mjolnir did look strange from a historical standpoint. A weapon like this was impractical, with so much weight on one side and barely any leverage from the handle. No normal person could wield it effectively. It seemed like he was about to say something, until his eyes shifted from the hammer in my hand to something behind me. His already pale face turned ghostly white. His eyes widened in terror. A cold sensation crept over me, and before I could even process what was happening, Thor's instincts flared once more, forcing me to turn around. And when I did, my own eyes widened in shock. Shit. 14 comments 0 vote. Chapter 4. Winter is coming. The moment I turned around, I saw someone standing so close that Thor's, instincts kicked in. Before I knew it, I was swinging Mjolnir at the person, knocking them back with enough force to send them crashing to the ground with a definitive crack. Back home, that alone could have landed me in prison. Shit, I froze, realizing what I had just done. For the first time, I felt a bit relieved that both I and the hammer were only level 1. Hopefully, the guy was still alive. Hey, are you alright? I asked, my voice laced with guilt. I stood motionless, waiting for any sign of movement from the person I had nearly killed. A low groan finally escaped from them, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. At least they weren't dead, that was good. Just as I was about to move forward and help him up, I froze again. I hadn't expected him to recover this fast. Technically, that should have been a good thing, but something about this person felt off. His glowing blue eyes locked onto mine, rendering me motionless yet again. Ska. Before I could react, he lunged at me from his position on the ground, nearly making me jump back in surprise. The hell, it was only thanks to my beyond human reflexes that I managed to dodge him, barely. He fell back, and that was when I noticed something horrifying, a sizable dent on the side of his head, as if his entire skull had cracked and sunk inward, yet he was still moving. How the hell is he still alive? My mind started racing. I had assumed I was in the MCU, but since when were zombies a thing there? I desperately wanted to deny it, but the thought nagged at me, there were versions of the Marvel Universe infected with a zombie virus. God forbid, but please, not that world. Even cosmic beings like Eternity weren't safe in that version. If that was where I was, my survival chances were looking grim. As my imagination spiraled into worst-case scenarios, the zombie launched at me again. This time, I didn't back down. My body moved on its own, sidestepping with precision before swinging Mjolnir with full force, sending the creature flying back with another sickening crack of bones. But just as I caught my breath from that near jump scare, I saw the damn thing rise again. It won't work. They're not afraid of iron. Run. The voice snapped me back to reality. I had almost forgotten about the boy I saw earlier. At least I could understand him, so no language barrier. Ska. Another guttural screech tore through the air, pulling my focus back to the immediate threat. Run. We need to go, the boy shouted. The thought of running crossed my mind, but for some reason, my body refused to move. Instead, I stood my ground, a surge of confidence welling up inside me, as if the very idea of retreating was unacceptable. And then it hit me, Thor's centuries of battle experience and warrior instincts were kicking in. Maybe it was his ego, but I wasn't running. Ha! Before I knew it, I was charging at the zombie, Mjolnir in hand. I swung down with all my might, crushing its legs while it was still on the ground. A deafening scream echoed through the area before I slammed my hammer onto its back and left it there. I silently prayed it would work like in the movies. To my relief, and to the utter shock of the boy, the zombie continued thrashing, but no matter how much it struggled, it couldn't get up again. Seems like you're not worthy, I muttered, a smirk threatening to form on my face. So, your name is Will, and you're a ranger of the Night's Watch. My lord, he responded. My lord, what do you call this place, Will? And what were you doing here? I asked, ignoring the strange way he addressed me. It's beyond the wall, my lord. I was scouting before they found us. His nervous gaze flickered toward the tied-up zombie, White Walker, he had called it. For a moment, I considered just burying the thing 10 feet under and being done with it, but my instincts told me otherwise. So, leaving Mjolnir atop the unworthy White Walker, I turned back to Will, determined to gather as much information as possible. Do you know how to kill it? I asked. Will shook his head but hesitated, as if there was something he wanted to say but was holding back. All right, tell me about the land beyond that wall of yours. At my question, Will gave me a strange look, almost as if I had asked him whether the sky was blue. It's the north, my lord. One of the 7 kingdoms in Westeros. The land ruled by His Grace, King Robert Baratheon. Westeros. I knew that name, not from the MCU. Not from Marvel. But from somewhere else. And only now was I beginning to understand where I really was. And I didn't like it. MCU was dangerous, sure, but at least it was modern enough for a 21st century guy like me to settle into. But this was Game of Thrones. A series one never even finished watching, let alone read the books for. Were the books even finished? I stood up as the realization hit me, making Will flinch as if he had somehow offended me. Having Thor's memories came in handy here, at least I understood how medieval monarchy worked. But right now, I couldn't care less about Will. I was too busy trying to suppress the bubbling irritation and anxiety inside me. Hacking away at a few trees was starting to sound really appealing. Congratulations on completing your first quest. You now know where you are. An upgrade point has been allocated to the host. The system's notification snapped me out of my daze, momentarily distracting me from the heavier topics I wasn't planning on addressing anytime soon. The system classifies quests into 3 categories. Final quest, completing it unlocks another world, granting full access to the new world. Rewards 3 upgrade points. Main quest, related to story progress and they are mandatory quests. Reward 2 upgrade points. Side quest, unrelated to story progression, side quests provide upgrade points like all other quests. They are not mandatory, could deny the side quest if he wishes so. Reward 1 upgrade point. Unknown quest, not much known about this quests, they solemn appears and host is advised to take caution before accepting one. Reward unknown. Damn, and here I thought I was stuck in this primitive world. Couldn't the system have told me this earlier? This definitely motivated me to get the hell out of here. Final mission, kill the Night King. ... Of course. Rolling my eyes, I stood there, fully absorbing my new reality. My lord, Will looked concerned. I had been silent for way too long, just staring at the air. Finally, I sighed and spoke. Take me to the wall. It's time to alert the realm of men. Winter is coming. 11 comments 0 vote. Chapter 5. The Wall. The journey to the wall in Castle Black was a freezing one. I almost forgot about the cold, too distracted by Thor's memories assaulting my mind, the reality of being reincarnated, ending up in the Game of Thrones world, fighting ice zombies, and, if that wasn't enough, the system now wanted me to kill the endgame boss. Yeah, too much had happened. To keep both mine and Will's attention away from the bitter cold, I kept the conversation going. The poor boy was freezing, thanks to me taking his Night's Watch cloak and using it to bubble wrap Mr. Zombie here so I could drag it back to Castle Black. He didn't protest, but I could feel his glare drilling into my back. I wasn't sure if he was cursing me for making his balls freeze off or for bringing a literal corpse to the people who were established to fight said corpses. Unlike him, though, I had a clear purpose. I might not have finished the TV show or read a single page of the books, but one thing was certain, the sooner the world learned about the White Walkers, the better. Especially for me. Maybe, just maybe, if they stopped fighting over that damn monstrosity of a chair, they'd send all that manpower where humanity really needed it. That meant I could leave this godforsaken, internet-less, electricity-deprived world just a little faster. If only I had all of Thor's powers from the get-go, I wouldn't have to go through this, unite humanity, nonsense. I could just fly to the Night King's hideout and crush his head. Sigh. So, while freezing with Will, I kept questioning him, not just to keep us entertained, but also to refresh my knowledge of Westeros and the Game of Thrones world in general. Soon, the forest thinned, and by the gods, I had to admit, HBO's VFX had nothing on what I was seeing. The wall, in all its glory, was more magnificent and enormous than I ever imagined. It was one of those sights that humbled you, making you realize you were nothing more than dust in this infinitely vast and ever-expanding cosmos. That's the wall. Will must have noticed my odd expression, and a small smile appeared on his face. Though I had been the one asking most of the questions, he had also asked a few about my origins. Maybe it was my clothes, practically identical to Thor's, minus the metal armor and red cape. I definitely looked like a noble. And if I looked anything like Chris Hemsworth, mistaking me for royalty wouldn't be too far-fetched. Especially in Thor's getup. Let's go. I'd rather not drag this corpse any longer than necessary, I said, since I was the one hauling the bound-up zombie through all this heavy snow. My lord, Will was about to say something, but I cut him off. Forget it, Will. In your condition, if I handed this thing to you, I'd just end up dragging 2 corpses to the wall. I joked, but there was truth in my words. The boy, no, the man, by Westerosi standards, was in no shape to handle this. Not only was he shivering thanks to me stealing his cloak, but he had little to no muscle on him. He was already exhausted from his earlier encounter with the White Walker, and I didn't want to put more pressure on him. I needed him to explain the situation on my behalf to the Night's Watch. The White Walker itself was proof enough, but having Will's testimony would help. He tried to take the load from me multiple times, but I could tell it was more out of fear regarding our social statuses. His nervous fidgeting made it obvious. I could tell him I wasn't a noble, but that would only cause problems for me later. Best to keep my mouth shut for now. Gotta come up with a believable backstory soon. At the foothold of the wall, we had to wait no less than 10 minutes before the gates finally opened. Maybe the Night's Watch used their pitch-black cloaks to identify their own from atop the wall, because I didn't see how else they could determine we weren't a threat. Which was ironic, considering I wasn't part of the Night's Watch. However, when the gates finally opened, and 5 men on horseback rode out with their swords drawn, I suddenly wasn't so sure about my assumptions anymore. Will, what are you doing here? And who's this? The man leading the group pointed his sword directly at me. Will stiffened, visibly nervous. He had already told me how deserting the watch meant execution. I didn't need the reminder, I had seen the show. But judging by his fear, whoever had died in his group must have been someone important. Under normal circumstances, it would make sense for Will to be afraid. But we had proof of what happened. I wasn't about to let his panicked stuttering make things worse. I am Thor Odinson, I declared, stepping forward. I found this ranger of the Night's Watch while I was lost in the woods. He was attacked by a White Walker. I wish to speak with your Lord Commander. I made sure my tone was firm, this wasn't a request. I was usually a peaceful guy, but people here didn't speak that language. If they mistook me for a noble, I might as well use the misunderstanding to my advantage. And it worked. The leader hesitated, taken aback by how I spoke. The other 4 scrutinized me from head to toe, their gazes lingering on my finely crafted hammer. Mjolnir didn't fit the conventional mold of a weapon, it was too impractical in both shape and weight distribution. But its craftsmanship alone was enough to tell them I wasn't some wildling. White Walkers, they're nothing but stories, one of the men sneered. I sighed. Then, without a word, I dropped the large, human-sized bundle I had been carrying onto the snow. The impact caused a muffled, inhuman scream to rip through the air. That single sound wiped the smug look off the man's face. The horses whinnied in panic, their riders struggling to control them. Then why don't you come down and see for yourself? I said, my voice cold and imposing. The men exchanged uneasy glances. It must be an animal, one muttered. No animal sounds like that, another said, shaking his head. Will, explain yourself. What's in there? The slightly older member of the group stepped forward and asked this in harsh tone. Alistair, Will's voice trembled. He speaks the truth. I couldn't save them. I told him to turn back, but he didn't listen. I couldn't do anything, so I ran. He was hyperventilating. The now Alistair narrowed his eyes. I didn't remember him from the TV show, but it's been years since I watched Game of Thrones, so going by my memory wasn't the best idea. Who is this man? Seeing Will struggle to respond, I stepped forward. Immediately, their swords were back on me. I simply sighed. Save it. I'm not the one you should be afraid of. A man scoffed. No one's afraid of you. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I knelt and loosened the bindings around the bundled up White Walker. Ska. Even with its mouth stuffed with cloth, the White Walker let out an ear-piercing screech. The Night's Watch's mighty warriors went pale. It thrashed violently, its limbs still bound, but nearly lunged at the nearest horse, causing chaos among the riders. I grabbed it by the head, forcing its face into the open for all to see. That, I said, my voice like steel, is who you should be afraid of." A stunned silence fell over them. "By the Seven," someone whispered. Alizer's eyes widened in shock. He glanced at me, then back at the creature, before snapping to his men. "Call Lord Commander Mormont." But he wasn't the only one in shock. His men fared far worse. Seeing their stunned expressions, he barked out. "Didn't you hear me, maggots? Call the Lord Commander now. Tell him winter has come." 7 comments 0 vote. Chapter 6. At Castle Black. "By the old gods, what is that monstrosity? 7 protect us. Why has this stranger brought this cursed creature here? 7 hells. Why did the Lord Commander even let that thing inside? Burn it, burn it. The stories say they fear fire." The men of the Night's Watch gathered, horror and trepidation in their eyes as they stared at the creature caged inside the cellar. When fear began to creep into their hearts, humans often decides to strike first. Even though the White Walker was behind bars, completely restrained, people demanded its execution, demanded it be burned. It wasn't them speaking, it was their fear. "Yes, burn it and burn the last hope for humanity along with it, you halfwits," I shouted, growing annoyed by their cries. My voice immediately brought pin-drop silence to the cellar. No one had expected such an outburst from the new guy, but I wasn't about to let them have any bad ideas about the zombie. It was imperative to safeguard the White Walker until its existence became known to others. "Burn it, and no one in the south will believe that the dead are lurking beyond this wall. Burn it, and no men will come to our aid when hundreds of thousands of these things start marching on the wall. Burn it, and every sacrifice made by the brothers of the Night's Watch, those who have long ended their watch, will be for nothing," I shouted, and finally, the men protesting the most quieted down. But there are always those who make things difficult. "My Lord Commander, this man bringing this thing here is a bad omen. Don't fall for his words. We can't have this demon. Lord Thor speaks the truth. For how long has the Night's Watch bled and frozen its blood? It was for this day. We are here to guard the realm of men, the realm of living. This here is proof that our ancestors didn't build the wall for nothing." Before the man could finish spouting his nonsense, another voice resounded. It was none other than the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Jeor Mormont. He was an old, burly man with completely white hair, yet he looked as imposing as hell. "But Lord Commander, this thing is a sin against the Seven, and..." "Enough. We are done here. The White Walker will stay in the cellar until all the lords of the north are made aware of it. That is final." The Lord Commander's authoritative voice finally silenced the man who had been protesting. "Disperse, all of you. Alistair, Benjen, Will, Maester Emmon, and Lord Thor, please follow me to my cabin. We need to talk," Jeor Mormont ordered before turning to leave. I was reluctant to follow him, though. Seeing the reaction from these Night's Watch members, I was afraid that someone was going to try something really stupid. "And Corin, Yorin, make sure none of these bastards do anything foolish," the Lord Commander added as he walked out of the cellar. "So, you're a traveler who lost his way and ended up beyond the wall, where you met Will, who was attacked by the walkers. And you saved him while also capturing one. You expect me to believe that?" Alistair spoke after hearing my generic background story, which contained little to no information about my past. You believe the dead can walk, yet you don't believe a living person can get lost." I shrugged as I fought a hard battle not to drink the wine they served me. I never drank in my old world, partly because I was still underage, but also because I never planned to. I intended to refuse the wine and ask for water, but then I realized water could contain algae and bacteria, one of the reasons people drank alcohol so much here. As for why I was resisting, well, it was because of Thor's instincts. He used to drink a lot. Even without his powers, I was sure I could handle liquor better than most with this body, but I'd rather not get addicted to it. I never believed they existed, until today. Until there was proof. Benjen Stark, the brother of the Warden of the North, spoke. "And the proof came from the same man you don't believe," I replied. Silence filled the room, only the sound of the fire crackling could be heard. Every so often, I caught people drifting their eyes from me to the shiny hammer I had placed on the table. "I believe you, Lord Thor. For the time being, the hospitality of the Night's Watch is yours, my lord," Jeor Mormont finally spoke. "Just Thor is fine. Lord doesn't go well with my name," I smiled, hoping to ease the tension. You have done us, and the realm of men, a great favor. Your actions could determine the outcome of the war that will surely come, the old man said. He looked like he was 1,000 years old or something. Though I didn't have much right to talk about age, considering I now aged over 1,000 myself. Thank you, Maester Emmon. I nodded at the old man, not even realizing that the maester was blind. Will, what can you tell us about the walkers? Benjen Stark asked. Out of everyone, he looked the most concerned. Well, aside from Alliser, who just looked scared. That led Will to explain what had happened to him and the 2 rangers who were with him. Needless to say, there wasn't much to gain from his story, no major information that could give me an edge. However, for the others, it was informative. Swords didn't work, then how are we supposed to fight them? Alliser asked. Test it out, once we run out of the use of that walker. Fire, heights, poison, drowning, there have to be things they fear. Otherwise, they would have long since marched on the wall. I spoke, even though I already knew that fire, dragon glass, and Valyrian steel worked against them. I couldn't just tell them outright. And the fact that I knew all 3 meant that my mind had started sorting through all those extra memories. I didn't feel like I could remember everything about the story, but this was a good start. Hell, even if I did recall things, they might be wrong. I shouldn't have read so many fanfics. I no longer knew what was real and what was made up. Yes, we have time for that. For now, the Lord Commander trailed off and looked at the black-haired man sitting to the side. For now, we need to tell this to my brother. The North has to know, winter is coming, Benjen Stark finally spoke. You do that, Stark. And Maester Emmon, I want all the lords of the North informed. Send all your ravens, the Lord Commander ordered. They'll never believe it, not until they see it with their own eyes, I interjected before Maester Emmon could speak. Maybe the old man had intended to say the same. Then ask them to come here. This is important, the Lord Commander decided after a moment of hesitation. He, too, knew no one would believe him. Does the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch have that much power, to summon all the lords of the North? I genuinely asked. I had never thought they could do that. No, but we expect at least a few of them to show up. Even a few, once they see it, will be enough, Mormont replied. I hummed to myself. Telling them one by one won't be effective. It's not just about informing them, we also need to decide how the North, and by extension, the entire 7 kingdoms, will act against this looming threat. Oh, we, already. What does this have to do with you? Your balls itching for glory. Alliser scoffed from the side. This, Lord, act wasn't going well with people who actually held power before. And somehow, I didn't even remember this irritating asshole. A character like this should stand out, right? It's, we, because when the dead come, it don't differentiate. They won't come after you any sooner than me just because you lack balls, you a hole. I saw the Lord Commander and Benjen Stark about to shut Alliser up, but I beat them to it. The man glared at me, I returned the favor with zeal. And besides, it's not like I know where home is at this point, even Maester Emmon don't know where Asgard is. I never heard of Westeros before coming here. So chances are I'll be getting involved one way or other. I added finally, to reduce down the tension once again. For few seconds no one spoke until finally Benjen Stark opened his mouth. Let's not be hasty here, before we send out any raven, let's inform of this to my brother. Once this known to him he gonna call all the lords of the North anyway. Agree, you should leave by dawn break. Jeor Mormont agrees. Will he believe you just by your words, to the point of calling his bannerman? Maester Emmon asked with doubt. Yes and no, he mostly likely will believe me but without seeing the thing for himself, he won't be calling his bannerman. Don't tell me you intend to take the walker to Winterfell? Lord Commander asked with narrow eyes. No, gods no. Benjen immediately shook his head. Then how? You intend to bring him back here, that gonna took much time. Actually, I might have an idea about that, seeing them overcomplicating things I spoke up. Just as I was explaining my plan I got this notification. New main mission, winter is coming. Warn North and the rest of the kingdoms about the existence of White Walkers. 14 comments 0 vote. Chapter 7, Winterfell. Tell me why I'm being dragged to Winterfell again. I couldn't help but whine upon seeing no sight of the ancestral home of House Stark. It had already been 2 days since we left Castle Black for Winterfell, and the journey was taking a toll on my back as well as my mental stability. There's only so much one can stare at the chilly, wide lands of the north before getting tired, after all. Because you're the one who fought the Walker, captured it, and even devised this plan. It's only natural that you come and meet my brother while we discuss this grave matter, Benjen Stark replied. I definitely saw a little smirk on his face. The man was enjoying my misery. As for why I was miserable, well, it's because I had to agree when Benjen Stark asked me to accompany him to Winterfell. In any other case, I wouldn't have, but the new mission demanded that I ensure the North, and by extension, the other kingdoms, knew about the existence of the White Walkers. My butt wasn't liking this journey any better than my dopamine sensors. For the first time in my life, I had to ride a horse. Now, Thor knew how to ride, unlike me, and by extension, I too knew how, but doing it and knowing it were two different things. Even Thor never rode a horse after getting Mjolnir, so relying on his memories to do it was like trying to hack the Pentagon on my first attempt. However, I had time to learn on the way. It wasn't like we were drag racing with the horses, it was a peaceful enough journey across a somewhat chilly land. But that time started to weigh on me. It turns out that the boredom that comes with riding a horse for 2 days straight is maddening. I needed something, anything, to pass the time and forget my back pain from sitting in the saddle for so long. For those who have read the books, this was obvious, but not for me. I had just realized how ridiculously big the North was. The TV series never showed the sheer scale of this land, so I assumed the distance between the Wall and Winterfell would be short enough. But nope. It was apparent to Benjen almost immediately that I wasn't used to riding horses for this long. He didn't voice it, but I could see him taking amusement in my plight. At least one of us wasn't bored out of his wits. I had to thank him, though. The man slowed our travel speed so I could keep up. At first, I even doubted I could ride a horse at all. Unlike me, the horse didn't have a system to make it worthy, after all. But to my utter confusion, I could mount it just fine with Mjolnir, as long as I am the one holding on to the hammer and not the horse. I'm still unsure how this worthiness enchantment works, but my best guess is that it detects the intent behind someone or something's actions. As Captain once said, put the hammer in an elevator, and it will still go up. Here we are. While I was busy decoding the secrets of All-Father's runic magic, Benjen spoke up. A grin broke across my face. Finally, the journey was coming to an end. In the distance, the ancient castle of Winterfell came into view. Said to have been built by Bran the Builder, this castle had lasted over 8,000 years. Nothing back on Earth came close to this feat. And even to this day, it wasn't just standing strong, it was thriving. Magic, no doubt. I can't think of anything else that could achieve this. As we entered Winterfell's gates, I was stunned to see the entire Stark family lined up, waiting with admiration and reverence, aside from Lord Eddard Stark, of course. What's going on? You don't get this grand of a welcome every time you come here, do you? I asked Benjen, who also looked taken aback by the scene. But upon hearing me, he shot an annoyed glance. You think I would have joined the Night's Watch if that were the case? He retorted before moving his horse forward with ease. I, on the other hand, had to try 5 different things before my damn horse budged. Then I realized what was happening. They weren't here for us, but for the king. This moment was in the TV show, but I didn't expect our timing to match so perfectly. Good for me. Now, not only the North but even the king and, to some extent, the entire 7 kingdoms would know. Maybe I could complete the main mission right here. Benjen, what are you doing here? Is everything all right at the Wall? I didn't receive any raven about your arrival, Ned Stark asked as soon as we dismounted. My back and butt silently thanked the old gods. Yes, everything's fine, but I have something important to discuss. I didn't send a raven because the matter is urgent and needed to be discussed with you in person, Benjen replied. What is it? Ned Stark asked, his expression growing serious upon seeing his brother like this. But Benjen just shook his head. He couldn't exactly say they had captured a White Walker out in the open, could he? Later, brother. First, you should receive the king and his family, Benjen said, knowing full well the storm this revelation would bring. It was better to discuss it later in private. While they were talking, I looked around the castle and the Stark family. They were all staring at their uncle in black and, more than anyone, at me. Even though I had a black cloak on, it was obvious from the rest of my attire that I wasn't part of the night's watch. The entire family, and even the servants, broke into murmurs and whispers. I didn't care much. I just looked for a few familiar faces, trying to recognize them from the HBO series. I spotted Catelyn Stark, who was observing me with the poised scrutiny of a highborn lady. She was beautiful, I had to admit, very similar to her actress in the show, but much younger. Robb Stark, Bran Stark, Rickon Stark, and even Sansa Stark, who was practically a little Catelyn at this point, given how much she resembled her mother, all looked strikingly similar to their HBO counterparts. Is it just me, or is she blushing while looking at me? I couldn't help but return a bashful look. I knew she wasn't blushing at me, but at Thor's face. Still, it felt good to be handsome nonetheless. Back at Castle Black, I had finally seen my own face in a mirror, and damn, was I amazed at how I looked now. Almost identical to Chris Hemsworth, but younger. I don't know why, but I looked like I was in my late teens, maybe 17 or 18. I could only assume this was because I had been the same age back on Earth, and the system had given me Thor's teenage form. The only thing I don't get is this strange marking on my back which I only saw in the mirror while posing like those bodybuilders I wanted to look like. No idea what that is, but there was no pain or inflammation. It looked like a tattoo the way it was looking, but I could tell that wasn't it. It's a strange birthmark, that's the only way I could describe it for the time being. I wonder how old he was when he looked like this, 500? 700? Shifting my gaze, I started looking for the real stars of the show, Arya and Jon Snow, two of my favorite characters. But that thought didn't last long before Ned Stark turned to me, his face contorting as if he were remembering something. He stared at me for a few seconds, scanning me from head to toe. Was I really that handsome? Or had he caught me staring at his daughter? Your Royal Highness. 19 comments 0 vote. Chapter 8. King's Entourage. Handsome. That was the only thing on Sansa's mind when the prince of her dreams entered through the gates of Winterfell. Then and there, she knew, this was the person she had been waiting for all this time. Those muscles, those long golden hair, those striking blue eyes, and by the seven, that dashing face. For a few seconds, Sansa completely forgot that her uncle Benjen stood right beside the prince. Her mind didn't have the luxury to even question why the Prince of the Seven Kingdoms would arrive together with her uncle or where the king and the rest of his family were. No, for Sansa, none of that mattered. She only looked at the man in front of her, feeling her heartbeat rise, so much so that she thought it might burst out of her chest. And she wasn't the only one under this delusion. Her siblings, her mother, and even the Lord of Winterfell assumed that this person was none other than the Crown Prince himself. She was flying on cloud 9, until her Prince Charming spoke. I'm afraid you are mistaken, my lord. I'm not the prince. I hastily corrected them, seeing what kind of misunderstanding was brewing in everyone's mind. Even Benjen, standing beside me, was glaring at me like he had just suffered a heart attack. It's strange calling people my lord even after having Thor's memories. Being the crown prince have its perks like not using this silly titles. As for why I call him lord, well, that what Benjen told me, and more importantly I like Eddard characters. He's among the very few characters in the story who have my respect. I really feel that if there exists one man in the entire Westeros who deserves this respect, then it's him. Back to Benjen though, unlike his brother the Lord of the North, Benjen wasn't accustomed to dealing with many lords outside of the North. So, almost immediately, he believed what his brother had assumed. I could see everyone looking at me with strange expressions, especially Ned Stark, who seemed unable to believe what I had just said. But when I didn't add anything more, he felt a little embarrassed and turned to Benjen, as if silently asking, "Who is this?" "He is Thor. He's the reason I came here in the first place. We have a matter of great importance to discuss with you," Benjen said, now just as confused as the others. I couldn't blame them, though. It must have been my timing, and my looks. With this blonde hair, I definitely looked like a Lannister. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself internally, not even realizing that while I was amused by the misunderstanding, a certain girl stood there, gaping. All her dreams had just plummeted faster than her heartbeat had been racing a second ago. "He's not the prince?" Arya asked, confused. She had never seen a prince before, but even she could tell that this man looked very much like one. She also noticed her sister making that idiotic face, The one she always had when dreaming about an imaginary knight coming to take her away. Robb was thinking the same. If this man isn't the prince, unconsciously, he had now set a high bar for the real one. Caitlin was now observing the man in front of her even more closely. As a highborn lady, she had met many nobles, but even she had to admit, there was something different about this man. He couldn't be just an ordinary person. "Pardon me, I mistook you for someone else. I'm Ned Stark, Warden of the North," Ned finally spoke, coming back to his senses. "I'm Thor Odinson. Nice to make your acquaintance," I replied with a smile. I noticed that he was still looking at me keenly, only the old gods knew what those eyes were searching for. I saw him open his mouth again, clearly wanting to say something, but before he could, a horn was blown, drawing everyone's attention back to the gates. This time, it was truly the king's entourage. I quickly nodded at Ned Stark before moving to stand beside Benjen. I knew my looks would make me stand out, but I really should have thought of a way to avoid this earlier. Now, there was nothing I could do about it. As the entire royal entourage entered, a fat man struggled to dismount his horse, needing help from others before making his way directly toward Ned Stark. That was the king himself. Behind him were some of the most iconic figures in this world, the queen, her children, and her brother, the famous Kingslayer. I kept my mouth shut the entire time. To maintain a low profile, I stepped behind Benjen, as he was a Stark and belonged in the front. This also had another advantage, they wouldn't know whether I kneel or not. I wouldn't have mind kneeling down back on Earth, but I have seen unusual amount of pride ever since coming here in this body. I just don't feel right kneeling for some reason. Feeling of anger, hesitation and defiance rise inside by just thinking of doing which doesn't befits a royal. Surely an after effect of getting Thor's body in mind. I have to get used to this quick. The king soon began greeting the Stark children, while the queen made her way forward to have her ego stroked, by making Ned Stark kiss her hand. It had been a long time since I had watched the show, but seeing everything play out live refreshed my memory. However, I wasn't doing as good of a job of hiding as I thought. Suddenly, the queen's eyes fell on me, locking me in a tense stare. I quickly broke eye contact, not wanting to give that crazy woman any reason to make trouble for me. But it seemed like trouble was hell-bent on finding me anyway. I saw the queen looking at me intently before making her way toward me. I internally hoped she wasn't coming for me, but all hope was dashed when she stopped right in front of me and raised her hand. It took me a moment to realize what she was doing. I am not a Stark. The host should have the honor. I'll allow it, she interrupted. I had been trying to escape the predicament, but Cersei immediately shut me down. Gotta admit, now that she was standing this close, she was beautiful. If only she could do something about that permanent scowl on her face. I see, but as a guest here, I can't do that to my host, so I'll pass it, I said without hesitation, looking directly at her eyes. I have no idea why I did that, honestly, I could have just ended this with just one kiss, but doing something I didn't want to made me repulsed. "Who are you?" she asked, narrowing her eyes, surprisingly not taking offense to what I just said. She looked directly into my eyes as she asked, and only the gods knew what was going through her mind. "I'm Thor Odinson." Even after I answered, she kept looking at me. Slowly, her scowl morphed into a strange expression, one I couldn't quite recognize. "How old are you?" she asked suddenly, catching me off guard. Besides my real age being a complicated matter, why did she even care? "I'm 17. What?" Cersei's eyes narrowed. I had totally forgotten that people here were weird with their numbers. 10 and 7 name days old, I corrected myself, still looking right into her eyes, without showing any weakness. My mind said not to. I'm not sure where I stand in the food chain yet with just level 1, but this newfound pride gonna be my end. She still didn't respond. Instead, she gave me another glance, one that lacked her usual scowl but carried something else entirely, before finally turning around and walking away. "What was that about?" Benjen hurriedly asked once the queen was gone. "I know no better than you do," I shrugged. What could I say? That woman was half crazy. Best to keep my distance. Benjen, on the other hand, gave me a hard look. First, his brother mistook the man he had brought as the crown prince. Now, the queen was suddenly taking an interest in him. Benjen didn't like it. It didn't help that neither he nor the Night's Watch knew anything about me. Well, at 17, I was a man, but calling me a boy wouldn't be wrong. It was just that, unknowingly, to be exact, Thor carried an aura that made him stand out. "Ned, take me to her," the king said immediately after greeting his old friend and family. "I was just relieved he hadn't noticed me. We have been traveling for a moon, my love. Surely the dead can wait," the queen spat, her scowl returning. She earned a glare from the king for that. "Take me to her, Ned." Robert completely ignored his wife's complaint and followed Ned Stark. Cersei looked like she was ready to murder someone. She flashed a fake smile at Lady Stark before marching inside Winterfell with her children. However, just before she disappeared inside, she turned back, almost startling me, and gave me another strange look before finally leaving. I won't lie, I was starting to feel uneasy. Mixing with that woman had never brought anyone good fortune. And in my current state with all stats being level 1, I couldn't afford to get caught up in her schemes. However, if I have no other option then fight I must. No. Why I'm thinking like that, damn Thor's personality is rusping on me. I saw a few more notable people in the entourage, but now that both the king and queen were gone, I just wanted to get away from all these watchful eyes as soon as possible. So I just ended up following Benjen and kept my dead down as much as possible. However, again it turned out that I was unwantedly attracting unnecessary attention towards me by just being there. I saw Jaime Lannister looking at me and so was the case with Crown Prince. 28 comments 0 vote. Chapter 9, Feast, Riz and LVL 1 hits. Be my hand, Ned. You belong in the Crownlands by my side, Robert Baratheon, the king of the Seven Kingdoms, finally said, making Eddard Stark's assumption come true. He knew why Robert was here, and he found himself overwhelmed by the proposal. Did he want to be the hand of the king and go south? No, only the old gods knew how much he hated the south. But this was his brother, all but in blood, and his king who was asking him. He couldn't find it in himself to refuse. So, Lord Eddard Stark kneeled, following his honor and duty like he always did. Your Grace, you honor me. I'm not honoring you. I'm asking you to run my kingdom while I whore and drink myself to an early grave. Come on, Ned, get up. We were meant to be brothers, to rule together. You helped me get the Iron Throne, now help me run it. Robert laughed and was ready to leave the Stark cemetery after meeting with his only love, Lyanna. And, Ned, we must join our houses. You have a daughter, and I have a son. This time, I'll make sure there will be a Northern Queen in the Red Keep. Robert Baratheon said, more like decided unilaterally, and walked away. Robert, that was when Ned Stark called his friend. Maybe he wanted to refuse to go south. Maybe he had a weight on his conscience regarding his bastard's true origins. Maybe he didn't want to marry his daughter into the south. But what came out of his mouth even confused Robert Baratheon. Joffrey is your firstborn. Yes, who else could it be? Robert looked at his brother all but in blood with confusion. Nothing, just asking. Ned shook his head. It was his imagination, after all. Why are you acting like that? A lady shouldn't play with her food, Septa said, making Sansa even more frustrated. I'm not playing. Then where is your smile? Look, the prince is looking at you. You shouldn't avoid his gaze. Give him a smile. Septa pointed at Joffrey, who was indeed looking at Sansa, more like waiting for her to notice that he was looking at her. But the girl never once looked at him. Her eyes mostly remained on her food while she pretended to eat, occasionally roaming to the entrance as if waiting for someone. Sansa, finally noticing Joffrey's gaze, gave him a forced smile before pretending to be shy and averting her eyes. He pales in front of Thor, Sansa muttered under her breath, but the Septa heard her. Don't compare that Night's Watch man with the Crown Prince, Septa said in an unusually harsh yet hushed tone, making sure no one else could hear her. But it's true. Thor looks 100 times more princely than Joffrey, Sansa replied with a little heat, though her voice remained hushed as ever. Shush, appearances can be deceiving, child, Septa pursed her lips and said, though she very much understood how her best student had developed such infatuation with a man she had just met today and had seen for less than 5 minutes. For all her virtues learned from the Seven, even she had to agree, the Night's Watch man looked more princely and was undeniably handsome. But that didn't mean she could let this infatuation develop into something else. He's not with the Night's Watch, Sansa muttered, her eyes roaming once more toward the gate. She wasn't the only one. Many girls and women were disappointed by the absence of the once uninvited guest from the Wall. And the Queen was one of them. However, her reasons were different. Cersei, for once in her life, couldn't figure out what she wanted. She had always known what she wanted since childhood, and she had always gotten it, either by money or other means. But today, she wasn't sure. From the moment her eyes had laid upon that man, she had been in a strange mood. Do I fancy him? She first asked herself this, and only got a half-hearted response. It wasn't often that she found a man more charming and handsome than her own brother after all. Any woman would want to have that man's company, and in that regard, Cersei found herself no different. But was it lust that had driven her to walk up to him this morning? No, there was something else, those long golden locks, that face. She couldn't pinpoint it, but she knew this wasn't just mere lust. If it were, she would have long since tried to seduce him, if not outright order him to warm her bed. She was the queen, after all, she could have anything she wanted. And yet, her heart beat differently around him. Not just lust, no, something else. And thus, she too found herself, ever so often, looking around the feast hall, searching for Thor, the man who had brought chaos to her mind for some reason. And while her eyes roamed, she saw her husband groping a wench, bringing back her trademark scowl. Dash dash dash. My hand trembled as sweat dripped from my head. I found myself sitting alone in a dark room with no light source. A candle had been provided to me, but I turned it off to stop any improvement in my impromptu training of controlling my thunder power. Are you Thor, god of hammers? That line had been disturbing me from the start. If the system modeled my power according to MCU Thor, then surely I should be able to use thunder, even at level 1. But it was immediately evident that I couldn't. Or, to be exact, not without the help of Mjolnir. Thor had this problem in the MCU, only resolving it after losing his hammer. I thought I would be better, but I was wrong. It was very hard to concentrate thunder without Mjolnir's aid. Sigh, I let out a sigh and grabbed the hammer lying beside me, picking it up and concentrating once again. Z, 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 and within seconds, the hammer lit up with weak yet bright lightning sparks in the dark room. It's good, for party tricks, that is, I rolled my eyes. This level of thunder was better suited for charging my phone on the go, not for fighting. It's at best could be used like a shotgun. I was slightly disappointed, only slightly though. I expected it to be weak, it was still at level 1, after all. By level 10, I should reach base Thor's starting level in the MCU. So, power wasn't the issue. I just had to add points by fulfilling tasks. No, my real disappointment came from not being able to use lightning without Mjolnir. By MCU Thor's standards, this was normal, he was never able to control his powers without his hammer. In this case, being modeled after base Thor was a limiting factor. I had to learn to use lightning without Mjolnir myself. I just hoped it was possible. If it was limited by the system itself, then I'd be so mad. But my estimations said it shouldn't be. The power had always been in Thor, he just didn't know how to use it. I didn't intend to be like him. Right now, I might possess the power of Thor, I knew I was strong, but how strong is level 1? It's human level, enhance human, I have to figure this out. So, after finally getting some free time, I locked myself in this room and started training, willingly missing the feast. Hell, I wouldn't have gone even if I was invited. It seemed that after getting that little bit of attention from the queen, even Benjen was wary of showing my face in front of the king's entourage. He, too, didn't bother inviting me. Well, good for me in the end. I sighed and tossed the hammer aside, going back to my training. But there was no improvement. Grr, suddenly my stomach roared, protecting to get something to eat. I can't help but sigh again. There was no shortage of food in Winterfell for their guests, but it's usually something a modern man with a modern taste palette like me would eat only in the most dire of times. Today was different though, there was a feast going on, I most likely wouldn't get food like this after today for a long time. I guess, with great power comes great hunger as well. 20 comments 0 vote, Chapter 10, Train and Bets. Ha. Ha. Whoa, how long is he going to continue that? Someone asked. Don't know, he's been at it since morning, another replied. I just tuned out their murmurings. At first, it was disturbing, seeing them all looking at me like I was an animal in a zoo, but after 4 hours of non-stop practicing, I no longer had the energy to think about them anymore. Last night, I tried my best to use lightning without the hammer, but all I could get out was a single spark, and that was only when I was getting angry at my useless attempts. And though anger has always been a source of power for Norse and Greek gods, I do not consider it an improvement. I can't always rely on anger to use lightning like that, and power driven by anger is often uncontrollable and destructive. I felt like banging my head against a wall when my stomach started protesting harder, and sleep was making me dizzy amidst nothing but failure. So, after that one spark of lightning caused by my anger, I just fell back onto the bed, deciding to leave the matter of lightning for the time being. If possible, I'd allocate daily training time for that. It could be a good pastime and definitely a necessary one in this godforsaken era of no entertainment. First thing in the morning, I attacked the Winterfell kitchen, grabbed whatever they gave me, then took my deer hammer and rushed out to train. Last time, Thor's fighting experience and muscle memory saved me. It was good, but only against an unintelligent zombie. Against real seasoned knights and skilled swordsmen, I wouldn't stand a chance even though I'm physically strong than most. Just having raw power won't do me much good if I don't have the skills to wield it properly. So, training was necessary. I'm lucky in this regard as well. Thor has a lot of memories of fighting, and he has developed a distinct style of combat that suits this body very well. I just have to replicate it with his memories. The fact that these muscles are already accustomed to those movements is just the cherry on top. It actually wasn't the body that was the problem, it was the mind. My mind is not used to making battle decisions on the fly. That is one skill I lack right now, and only Thor's battle instincts saved me when I fought the zombie. Thus, I have to iron out both my body and mind before I find myself in another battle. So, here I was, going at it for 4 hours straight, swinging my hammer just as Thor did in his memories. And I have to say, it's all coming very naturally to me. From every swing to the shift in balance, I was getting better. I could visibly see the difference before my eyes. I started with some standard training, running, push-ups, and sit-ups. This alone was eye-catching for others. People here don't train like that. Then, I switched to swinging my hammer and refining the movements until I got used to them. That last part was pretty normal, if not for the fact that I was swinging a completely unconventional and impractical hammer due to its size and mass. If that wasn't enough, I was swinging that exceptionally well-made yet horrid weapon for 4 hours straight. Of course, people were going to talk. Huff, 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 again, once again, I muttered to myself, letting the cold northern breeze cool me down while I caught my breath. Clap 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 clap, fabulous. Never saw someone swinging a club with such enthusiasm. Do men often train like this on the wall? I looked up to see a golden-haired boy, smugly watching me. Behind him stood a man clad entirely in black armor, his helmet shaped like a dog's head. Prince Joffrey. I had been trying to avoid the Lannisters, but it seemed that was a fool's errand while living in Winterfell alongside them. So, maybe I have to give them a reason to avoid me. I'm not from the wall. I replied offhandedly, not giving him much attention. The Joker will demand more of it if I give even a grain worth of it. Not from the wall. Interesting. So, where are you from? Certainly not from the wall. Huh, tell me, do people often use this kind of toy to play around in from where you're from, calling themselves warriors? Joffrey asked with a gleam in his eyes. I could see from miles away that he was looking for trouble. Sigh. No. None except me. It shows. Joffrey laughed while looking at me. I have seen this. Characters often tries to do this in Game of Thrones. It's like they are born with a prick in their ass. None except, because there is no one like me, I replied, now getting a little serious as I got closer to him and easily flipped my hammer in the air, something very hard with an object with its weight, and yet I did it effortlessly, making both Clegane and Joffrey shocked, especially Joffrey who was so close to me now. I got the hammer when I was a child. It was indeed a toy to me, until I learned that if I swing it hard enough, it's a toy no more. I slowly got closer to him and glared at him. Being significantly taller and more muscular than him definitely helped me what I was going for here. The bastard slowly stepped back, losing that smirk on his face. But I wasn't done. I slowly lower my head to his level. Only I swing it because only I could. Many tried to lift the hammer, very few could, and none lived to tell the tale. Do you know why? I said with a heavy voice, not even Clegane on the side getting anxious seeing how his hands were almost on his sword. Why? Ha ha. Because none were worthy. I slowly slip the words into his ears and turn around. I don't like bullying, but that was damn satisfying. Me turning back also seemed to relax Clegane, who was clenching on his sword handle. However, just as I was going back in to fill this raging fire my belly, I heard someone shove his own foot on top of the hammer. I'll do it. Huh, the hammer, I'll lift it. You think that damn piece of junk can tell whether I'm worthy? Give the hammer here, Joffrey all but order. You sure royal ass. I mean highness. People are watching, you can still take back your words, but once I put the hammer down. I trailed off. Joffrey glared at me, though looking uncertain he opened his mouth finally. I'll lift that hammer. If I lift it, then it's mine and you would be punished for spreading falsehood in this kingdom and for lying and deceiving. Joffrey shot back, maybe thinking I would be afraid. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't the first person who tried to lift the hammer. The entirety of Castle Black had failed before I came here. None were able to and none shall. If this was some other fantasy like Tolkien then maybe, but finding a worthy one in G.R.R. Martin's work, I have better chances of finding peace here than that. Haha, excellent suggestion. Very well then, agree, but what do I get in return if you can't lift the hammer? Certainly, a prince of your caliber and honor with a mass reputation would put something equal to this wager. Now I was grinning. I wasn't looking to scam people, but if they themselves wants to be scammed, then whom I'm to say no in the face of a gifted horse? Huh, that will never happen. Sure, but just in case, let's put something on the table. How about 1,000 gold dragons? Surely it's nothing for the crown prince and the next king of the 7 kingdoms, or it's too much. Should I lower the amount? Clegane on the side looked at me with narrowed eyes. He wasn't getting what was going on. Yes, the hammer should be heavy by the look of it, but not so much that the prince can't lift it, and a 1,000 gold dragon. Where did this guy got the balls to ask for something like that? Fine, just toss the damn hammer already. Joffrey was getting annoyed now. Seeing I wasn't playing his game, he now was just looking away to punish me. Fair enough. I shrugged and tossed the hammer at the ground. Had two thoughts of directly tossing it at him though. What followed was a show of a whiny child making a fuss. Joffrey bent down and tugged the hammer only for drag himself immediately down at the sudden jerk. He fell down to the ground while I kept on looking at Clegane. Joffrey then went to use 2 hands and with all his power he attempted to lift the hammer only for the hammer to not budge an inch. Even the hound was surprised at this. People around us started to murmur. Why it won't move? Joffrey shouted, not finally fussing about the situation. Don't worry, you're not the first one who has tried to move it, and certainly you're not the last one who will fail. I shrugged and bent down just to easily pick up the hammer in front of him, making him confused and looking at me like I was a ghost. 1,000 gold dragon, I reminded him as I waved my have and was ready to take my leave. However, the horrid creature once again started making noise. What did you do? It's not possible, you cheated, Joffrey shouted. Looking around I realized that we have gathered quite a bit of audience here. Sigh. Cheated? How? I already told you that none can lift it beside me. As you see, I didn't lie. So how do I cheat? You did something. There is no way I couldn't lift the. Joffrey started to get frustrated, the usual response when things are not going his way. And just I said you can't lift it, no one can. I didn't lie, I don't see how I cheated. So, I shrugged, seeing Joffrey not having much to say. I was ready to take my depart when finally he said something which stopped me. Stop, this ain't over yet. He glares at me. You want coins, right? Fine, you'll get your coins. Fight him. If you beat him then you get to take you coin. He said with irritation as he pointed at Clegane beside him. Another wager I see. I looked at Clegane and pondered. Though I don't wanna do what this spoiled brat tells me, but it's a chance to test out my current level. Thor level 1 is good and all, but how much is that level 1 exactly? 10% of Thor. If base Thor was state to be level 10. My assumptions are good and all, but they don't account to much without testing out my real strength. Fine, I'll fight, but the wager should be equal. I lose and you pay me nothing. But what if I win? What then? I asked. I'll double the coin. Joffrey didn't care, he just wanted to see the man in front of him beaten. Nay, 1,000 will suffice, but I could use a little chat with His Grace, King Robert. Grinning I put forth my condition. 29 comments 0 vote. Chapter 11. Never underestimate level 1. I could use a little chat with His Grace, King Robert, I said, waiting for a response. The mention of the king stunned Joffrey. I could see his erratic behavior calming down. Finally, as the murmurs around us grew louder, he felt the pressure and shouted. Very well, come on, get on with it. Joffrey's glare was back. Didn't expect him to agree. Though there was always a chance he'd go back on his word, whatever. I could definitely use a talk with the king. At the rate things were going, it didn't seem like I would be able to speak with Ned Stark anytime soon. Benjen didn't even try yesterday, and even today, I hadn't heard any news from him. So, I had to push matters on my own. To fulfill the first quest, I needed to expose the White Walkers to the Northern Lords and the South. The North was easy enough. Even if Ned Stark didn't call all the lords before leaving for King's Landing, the Night's Watch could always try to gather the Northern Lords. As Lord Commander Jeor Mormont said, even if one came, it would be enough. The others would eventually believe through word of mouth. However, that process was slow, and it was the only reason I had come to Winterfell. Now was the time to make good use of that. The Hound drew his sword and pointed it at me. I raised Mjolnir defensively. Already winded from training, I was tired, no doubt about it, but at the same time, I was excited. This would be my first real fight here. Aha! And then it began. Without giving me a second, the Hound rushed at me, swinging his sword. Did I mention the bastard was in full plate while I was wearing just a thin shirt from training? On instinct, my body ducked, dodging the attack while sidestepping when he tried to Spartan kick me. Seeing a little opening, I swung my hammer, only for him to close the gap when he saw my arms wide. He head-butted me, again, with his helmet on. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt as much as I thought, and I didn't feel much force from the attack. But, I fell for that trap. My inexperience was showing. Just stop using your brain and let Thor do the fighting, I muttered to myself with irritation as I was knocked back. He came again, his sword pointed at my side. Seeing the attack coming, I moved my hammer to block it, only for him to suddenly turn, retract his sword, and use the same motion to strike my extended leg. Fuck. For a big guy, this dog was surprisingly agile. Maybe exhausting myself to death on the first day of training wasn't the best idea. At least it didn't hurt much. Level 1 or not, we were still talking about a god's body. I quickly created some distance, deflecting a few jabs he sent my way before he closed in again, going for my exposed side. I turned and swung my hammer to intercept the sword. Only to feel his hand grab my long hair and yank me close before he drove his armored knee into my gut and threw me back. I managed to keep my balance, but I was more surprised at how he moved than anything else. Yeah, get him, Joffrey mocked from the sidelines, grinning. Clegane simply stood still, watching me. Don't touch my hair. The words left my mouth before I even realized it. A strange surge of anger flared within me at the thought of my hair being touched. The Hound came again, swinging from the side. This time, I wasn't going to just defend. Not holding back, I swung Mjolnir. Zock! A metallic clang rang through the air, and before either of us knew it, Clegane's sword was shattered in two, sent flying out of his hands as he stumbled back, shock clearly written across his face. That should have been where the match ended, but my body moved on its own. With my right swing, I had created the perfect momentum to bring my hammer to the left. Now, gripping Mjolnir with both hands, I followed through with a powerful swing, striking him directly in the chest. Dumb. The entire breastplate crumpled inward as Clegane was lifted a few inches off the ground before crashing down with a thud. His chest plate was crushed, and he immediately lost consciousness. The sheer force of the impact had sent him flying nearly half a meter back before he hit the ground. The murmurs stopped. The prince was gaping at what had just happened. I wasn't any better. Slowly, my eyes shifted from the fallen man to the hammer in my hands. It still felt easy to lift, its weight perfect. But suddenly, it felt like I was holding a mountain. Was it the hammer, or was it my own strength? Perhaps both, I couldn't say for sure, but one thing was clear. From now on, I would never underestimate level 1 again. What are you all looking at? Call for the maester, I spoke before turning to leave, though not before reminding our dear, stupid little prince of our wager and what could possibly go wrong if he didn't deliver. A little healthy dose of threatening never hurts anyone. More importantly, I now had a certain idea of where I stood in terms of power. While I had used my full strength with one hand to break his sword, I had held back when I struck his chest, even with both hands. I didn't want to kill him. Out of all the characters in Game of Thrones, Sandor Clegane was one of the more decent ones. Yeah, he had done bad things, but ultimately, he could be considered good overall. Not to mention, killing him would have overcomplicated things for my plans. It was surprising how easily I thought about killing someone when I had never done so before. But I spoke like this because I had Thor's memories. He had done it so many times that I felt like I could do it just as easily, without hesitation. Is that a good thing, or should I be concerned? I had no idea. For now, I just knew one thing. I had to figure out exactly what my level 1 body was capable of and how much of what had happened was my own strength versus Mjolnir's magic. 38 comments 0 vote. Chapter 12. Meet the King. I heard he beat the Hound, Arya muttered to her sister as they, along with the others, stood watching what was about to unfold. Be quiet, Sansa chided, worry clear in her eyes upon learning the news. At first, a big smile spread across her face. Hearing how strong the person she liked brought a certain unknown pride to her. But that joy was immediately squashed under the realization that she was already spoken for Joffrey. If that wasn't enough, her sour mood turned to heart-palpitating worry for her knight with the shiny hammer when she learned that Thor had been summoned by the king. Now, she was just praying that nothing bad happened to Thor and that the king would show mercy. Maester Luwin, how is Clegane? Ned Stark asked, a complicated expression on his face. When he first heard that Thor and Sandor had fought, he wasn't overly concerned. As long as the royal family wasn't disturbed, other matters could be sorted out easily. But when he learned that Thor had not only beaten the Hound but had also shattered his chest plate and broken a few of his ribs, he immediately rushed out. He'll live, my lord. He just needs a little time to heal, Luwin replied, his gaze turning toward the man responsible for the injuries. What do you have to say for this? Ned Stark turned to me and asked. Good thing I held back on the last attack, I shrugged. Hearing this, the others were dumbfounded, and Ned was clearly getting angry. Ha ha ha, however, that was when laughter broke out. I saw the poor breastplate. Almost looked like one of my works when I was your age, Robert grinned. Reminds me of what I did to that dragon spawn. My hammer struck true back then, and unlike you, I didn't hold back. The entire armor was crushed in, and his ribs were shattered. Robert grinned wider, reminiscing about what he did to Rhaegar at the Trident. It was clear that he wasn't angry. The way he was drinking said it all. He didn't even want to be here in the first place, he was more or less dragged along. You almost mortally wounded one of the king's entourage. What do you have to say for that? Ned Stark ignored his friend and turned back to me. First, it was a spar, we weren't fighting for real. Second, I wasn't the one who asked for the spar, it was your Prince Joffrey who wanted to bet with me and asked me to fight his dog. And third, I told you I held back. He wouldn't have lived if I hadn't, I replied, looking him straight in the eyes. Lies. He attacked me, and the Hound tried to save me. Joffrey spoke up, opening his dustbin of a mouth again. There were too many witnesses for him to lie, and I was sure Ned Stark already knew what had actually happened. Cersei stood beside her little lion, and by the look of it, she didn't even know what was going on, but she was going to take her son's side anyway. And what reason would I have to attack you? I looked at him with slight irritation. His expression showed he had a million excuses lined up, but I didn't let him speak. And let's say I did want to attack you. Do you really think you would be standing here, breathing, completely safe and unscratched, if someone like me, who put your dog in the nursing room, was after you? A silence spread across the room. My gaze locked onto Joffrey, and he didn't dare to say another word. Don't try to twist the facts, you, Cersei started, stepping in to defend her son. Enough, woman, we all know what happened there. Half of Winterfell was watching the fight, for God's sake, Robert interrupted. Like Ned, he already knew the truth, it wasn't hard to figure out. Tell me, what were the terms of the fight, and what led to it? Robert finally asked, glaring at me. Your son couldn't lift my hammer. I told him no one could besides me, but he didn't listen. He challenged me, claiming he could, only to fail just like everyone else. I saw a chance to make some profit, so now the crown owes me 1,000 gold dragons, I said with a smile. Robert's eyes moved to the hammer I was holding. This was the first time he had actually looked at it. When he heard that someone from the wall had beaten the hound, he was intrigued, so he came along. But the moment he laid eyes on Thor, he felt something strange. For starters, the boy, just turned man, was incredibly handsome. More than that, Robert saw his own past in him. He wasn't that handsome back then, no, but the powerful build, the hammer at my side, it certainly didn't help that teenager even resembled him to some degree, with almost the exact same blue eyes. No wonder Ned asked me about my firstborn, he mused. But there was more than just appearance. Even the nonchalant attitude he had reminded Robert of his younger self. Now, he was quite interested in the strange hammer. Robert had more experience with a hammer than anyone here, maybe even more than Winterfell's smith, Micken. He could see it was exceptionally made, but at the same time, it looked impractical. However, the deformed iron breastplate before him said otherwise. Now he was really intrigued to see the boy, know the man use the hammer in a real fight. He wanted to ask more about it but restrained himself. As I explained the situation, Robert became more and more amused. Wait a minute, you mean to say that the hound is lying in bed with half his ribs broken just because he messed with your hair? Robert asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't like people touching my hair, I shrugged. Ha 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 ha, you're a funny lad. Fine, the matter is settled, Robert announced. But father, Joffrey immediately protested, only to shut up when Robert glared at him. Cersei, standing beside him, also wanted to speak up, but she restrained herself. Earlier, she had merely been trying to support Joffrey, not going directly against Thor. Even she didn't know why, but she didn't want to take any hasty actions. She had strange emotions regarding the handsome teenager with long blonde hair just like her family and piercing blue eyes like his pig of a husband. This reminded her of something which she didn't want to remember. So, what did you want me for? Robert finally asked when most of the people had left. Just to see what we brought from the wall, I said, turning to Benjen, who was now glaring daggers at me. Of course, before coming here, he had given me an earful that almost turned into full-blown shouting when I told him why I had done all this in the first place, to meet the king. From the wall, Robert looked at the cage placed in front of him by Benjen. Even Ned seemed confused, giving his brother an inquisitive glance, but Benjen just looked at him as if to say, you'll know soon. What is it? A proof that winter is coming. 26 comments 0 vote. Chapter 13, Threat Beyond the Wall. By the 7, what have you put in my drink, Ned? Robert all but choked as Benjen carefully placed the item he had brought and finally lifted the cloth covering it. Haha, I swear by my hammer, it's not the drink. I, for some reason, had a smile on my face, seeing two of the strongest people on this continent gawking at the thing in front of them. The two of them surely resembled real brothers by how they looked right now. Though I knew better than to take this as a laughing matter. By the old gods, Benjen, what is this? Ned Stark finally came out of his stupor and asked his brother, who stood beside him with a grim face. The others weren't faring any better either. Understandable, since currently in front of them was a pale blue, severed hand of a White Walker, thrashing around, hitting the small cage restraining it, and making those horrendous noises, like nails being scraped against certain surfaces, sending shivers down one's spine with its high-pitched screeching. Inside the room stood the king, Ned Stark, Jaime Lannister, Tyrion Lannister, and some other important figures. I had made sure they were all here to learn the truth as soon as possible. I had even considered bringing the queen, just in case she assassinated Robert like in the show. Someone in the south needed to be aware of the White Walkers. But ultimately, I didn't bother. That woman was the kind who would let the entire continent burn if it meant gaining any advantage. Her brothers were much more suited to attend this meeting. This is what I've been meaning to talk to you about, brother. I would have brought it up immediately if not for the sudden arrival of the king's entourage. I told Thor to wait a little while, but it seems like he made all that fuss just to get your attention, your majesty. Benjen sighed, particularly giving me a glare. And waste this excellent opportunity to make the Seven Kingdoms aware of the looming threat beyond the wall. Not on my watch, I replied, speaking to no one in particular. Seven hells, now's not the time for this. Explain, what is this sorcery? Robert Baratheon looked at the hand thrashing inside the small iron cage meant for ravens, and a chill went through his spine. He had a very bad feeling about what he was seeing. Yes, forget about other things and just explain. Ned Stark asked his brother again. He had an idea of what this could be, but by old God and the new he didn't dare believe it. A few days ago, a small ranger party left Castle Black to investigate wildling activities. We didn't hear from them for days. Then one of the lads returned with Thor, carrying that thing wrapped and tied up on his shoulders. Benjen paused. And it's not just the hand I brought. The entire dead body is still kept in the cellars of Castle Black, roaring and eager to eat anyone foolish enough to unbind it and step inside the cellar. I added, making the others take a sharp breath. For confirmation, they looked at Benjen, who only nodded. When they reached the wildling camp, they found all the wildlings slaughtered, torn to pieces. Though I believe Thor could explain better, as I wasn't there myself. Benjen looked at me, prompting the others to do the same. Well, I wasn't there at the start either, to be precise. I just happened to meet the only survivor of the ranger party while I was lost beyond the wall. He was running from something, and I needed his help to find my way. By now, you all should know I'm not from Westeros. Before I could ask him anything, behind me stood the owner of this hand. I have to say, I have fought many battles, but I had never seen anything like that before. It was unnatural, the stench of death, the glowing blue eyes. It was as if the thing had crawled out of the stories adults used to scare children. I replied, keeping a straight face and making sure not to break eye contact with the king and Ned Stark. For a while, there was silence. It seemed they had all lost their words, until finally, the Jaime Lannister spoke up. And you expect us to believe that? I'm sorry, but strange as this might be, I don't see myself believing in legends of White Walkers just because of a moving severed hand, Jaime said, making all of us look at him. Nay, I don't expect you to believe anything. I want you all to see what lies beyond the wall in the north. I assure you, it's not just some wildlings. I fought one, and thus, I believe it. Will, the ranger, saw 2 of his fellow Night's Watch brothers die to these things, and thus, he believes it. The Night's Watch saw this monstrosity when I brought it there, when I caged it inside the cellar, when I severed its hand to bring here, only for the hand to keep moving. They saw the body of that thing still moving even after I crushed half of its skull, after it lost a leg, after it had been without water or food for days. And yet, it still makes noise. It still moves. That is when the Night's Watch believed. If you find yourself unable to believe, then by all means swordsmen, you are welcome to visit the wall and see this new wonder for yourselves. Perhaps then, you will believe. I said, with a little heat in my tone. Lately, I had found myself quick to anger, and this man insinuating that I was lying only stoked that fire. Jaime quieted down. He wasn't someone to believe in fairy tales, but the proof was in front of him. Still, he didn't want to believe it. However, if the man who defeated Sandor claimed to have fought and defeated one of these creatures, and if it was imprisoned in Castle Black, then... Did you try killing it? Robert finally spoke after my outburst had silenced Jaime and the others. No one else dared speak after that. While fighting it, I dealt enough damage to kill a man 10 times over, it did nothing. Part of the reason I brought it to the wall was that I had no way to kill it. As for whether it is possible to kill, if that's what you're asking, we are not sure. We didn't touch it further, since we needed proof to convince the rest of the northern lords, and if possible, the south, if we could get any help from there. I replied before Benjen could. At this point, he was probably wondering why he was even here. Who was the first ranger again? Are you telling us that there are more of these things beyond the wall and we don't have a way to kill them? Tyrion asked, finally making his presence known. It was easy to forget he was even there. Hearing Tyrion say that made everyone panic slightly. Their minds rebooted, and they finally started to grasp the reality of the situation, now eager to know what defense the Night's Watch had against this threat. I'm afraid I have no answer for you, Master Dwarf. I'm just as much in the dark as any of you. I only know that there are more of these things out there, since it's impossible for a single undead to have slaughtered an entire wildling camp. And even if they are not many yet, they will be soon enough, because the corpse this hand belonged to, was a wildling from that same camp. That was like a bomb going off. Only a few failed to grasp the implications, but those who did went pale. How many wildlings are beyond the wall currently? The king asked, his eyes wide, as if he had connected the dots. For once, the alcohol didn't dull his wits. Unfortunately, he was asking the wrong person. I had no idea. So, even I turned to Benjen for answers. We don't know, but if we count all of them, hundreds of thousands. Benjen replied grimly. Gods help us. 27 comments 0 vote. Chapter 14, Hunting. I did my job. Now the North, and by extension the South, knew about the looming threat of the White Walkers. So, where is my upgrade point in Odin's name? I expected to get it as soon as I showed Ned Stark that hand. Things often don't go as planned though. So here I am, stuck with no progress, wanting to knock my head against Mjolnir. I must be missing something, I pondered as I mindlessly followed the king on his hunting trip. He said this helped clear his mind. The fool didn't realize that, aside from sleeping, this was the only activity where he wasn't drunk enough to forget his own name. The only explanation for the system's silence about this quest could be that I hadn't completed it yet. Since this was a main quest, it had to be more difficult than I initially thought. Maybe I had to see it through to the end, summoning all the lords of the North and showing them the proof. Outside of that, I couldn't see anything else that might work. The North needs me, Robert. Robb is too young. Without me, the Northern lords will, Ned Stark was saying, but the king cut him off. 7 hells, Ned, without you, I can't run the fucking 7 kingdoms, let alone help you with the problem up here in the North. You know damn well that old lion has been eyeing the hand's position for more than a decade now. I'm surrounded by those fucking gold heads. The whores in King's Landing know more about the kingdom than I do. I got no one I could trust there. I need you there, Ned. You have my word, the North will get all the help it needs when the time is right. I'll take charge myself, but that will never happen if that old lion becomes the hand. Even as king, I can't handle everything. Robert's tone was heated. They had been bickering ever since I forced them to face reality. If Ned stayed, the North would have a strong leader when the time came, not to mention that the South might avoid war altogether, and the king might even survive. That was far more favorable for fighting off the White Walkers. That was the reason I was here, accompanying them on this hunt. Besides the fact that the king himself had asked for me, I had another reason. Bran, Ned Stark's second youngest, was soon going to see something he shouldn't and suffer the consequences. His situation could force Ned Stark to stay, whereas in the books and TV show, he still followed his honor. But maybe, this time, with so many reasons in his favor, he wouldn't. As for why I was here, it was to ensure nobody could blame me for what happened to Bran later on. Catelyn Stark realized that the Lannisters were behind Bran's fall from the tower by finding a strand of blonde hair at the scene. And hell would freeze over before they mistook it for one of mine. Yeah, I felt bad for not saving the child, but it was important for the realm. That's what I told myself, until Thor's pride surged out. What kind of god would I be if I had to sacrifice a child to save the realm? Until I draw breath, not even a strand of his hair will come to harm, blah, blah, blah. My mind started coming up with all sorts of reckless justifications. This time, though, I suppressed the feeling. It helped that I only realized all of this after coming out here to hunt with the king. There was no way for me to return to Winterfell in time anyway. Shush, everyone crouched down, making me the only one unaware of what was happening. Looking forward, I saw a stag. Alright, we're here to hunt. With all their bickering, I almost forgot. Joffrey, come here, take the shot. Robert Baratheon called out his firstborn. The boy was carrying a crossbow. Of course, he missed, and we had to chase after the damn stag for another 20 minutes. Good thing he was keeping his distance after what happened earlier, or I would have given him another reason to. Have you ever hunted before? Robert asked. Yes, but not for food. You don't look like a lowborn from wherever you're from. What were you back home? Robert eyed me, assessing my looks and mannerisms. A VIP customer for all the wine and cup makers. Ahahaha, smart lad, didn't see you drink much, though. Coming here gave me enough reason not to. I replied, though what I really wanted to say was that meeting him was the reason. Robert Baratheon was much like the fat Thor from Endgame, a man who had lost everything and now drowned himself in drink and whores, stumbling his way to an early grave. Worry not, even if you can't find your way back, you're always welcome in King's Landing. I might even knight you if you're really as good with that hammer of yours as others claim. Robert laughed, patting my back. Soon, we found the stag, and this time, they didn't give Joffrey a chance. Meaning, we caught it. I stood back, uninterested, until I heard something. Did you hear that? I asked. Hear what? That. I pointed in the direction of the noise, but they all seemed oblivious. I knew I wasn't mistaken. It might not have been shown much in the MCU, but Asgardians were superior to humans in every way, senses included. A sudden growl shattered the calm, alerting everyone. This was the perfect time to say I told you so, but I refrained. Instead, I tightened my grip around Mjolnir, ready to fight. Get back, I shouted as whatever it was came directly at us. Then, we all saw what we were facing. A mountain bear, someone shouted. The bear roared as it broke through the foliage. Run, I shouted, seeing how close the king and others were. The bear was charging straight toward the stag's carcass, likely drawn by the scent of blood. It rushed at Ned Stark and Robert, who barely had time to react. The beast knocked Ned aside and pinned the king to the ground. Save the king, protect the prince. Joffrey had gone pale, too terrified to utter a word as he watched his father pinned beneath a massive bear. The Kingsguard tried to distract the beast, but the bear had already chosen its target, the biggest one. Just as it was about to sink its teeth into Robert's soft, juicy belly, a powerful hit knocked it back. Me, of course. Without hesitation, I closed the gap and swung Mjolnir with full force, slamming it into the bear's side. The impact was so strong that the beast was thrown off the king, roaring in pain from the blow. It struggled to rise, its upper right limb badly injured. I didn't waste a second. Gripping Mjolnir with both hands, I aimed for its head. Ha! I roared and brought the hammer down, crushing the bear's skull into a paste of bone, flesh, and blood. And just like that, the fight was over. Ned Stark and the king stared at me in shock. What? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Seven hells, tell me that bear took more effort than that undead, or we're all fucked, Robert muttered, now wondering if the White Walkers could be easily beaten outside. Killing them was an illusion if I was this much absurdly powerful. Don't know. They all went down in 2 hits. I shrugged and effortlessly grabbed the bear by the fur, dragging its carcass toward our horses with one hand. What are you looking at? Your king just got attacked by a bear, help him. I shouted at the gawking men. The journey back to Winterfell was filled with talk of how I had killed the bear with a single swing of my hammer. Of course, they checked the corpse's head, and the more they saw, the more disbelief filled their faces. Being the MVP of the hunt, I was surrounded by people the entire way back. I barely had any free time until we arrived in Winterfell. The moment we entered, I expected some commotion regarding Bran. But to my surprise, nothing. Bran was fine, the Stark family was fine. And that's when it hit me. Did I miss something? 31 comments 0 vote. Chapter 15, a request. What did you say to Jaime? Cersei stormed into Tyrion's room, her voice so heated it could melt a dragon. That a man has another sword that isn't made of steel and shouldn't be shy about using it. Maybe give our dear father some heirs of Castle Rock, bastards though they may be. Something is better than nothing, right? Tyrion was startled to see his sister there. He had been drinking and almost choked, though that was still better than her catching him doing other things he was infamous for. Cersei restrained herself from walking up and slapping the imp. What did you say to him that made him agree to go to the wall with you? She asked again. She was frustrated. Once Robert went out to hunt, she finally had a chance to spend quality time with her brother, only to find that Jaime wasn't in the mood. What about her mood? Before she knew it, Jaime had taken his sword and gone out to train. What was that about? She had tried to seduce him, but nothing. He had been disturbed for a few days, but only now did she realize how much. Then, out of nowhere, he announced that he would be going to the wall, with Tyrion, of all people. Really, this is the first time I'm hearing of this. Tyrion understood what was going on but had no intention of telling his sister. The Seven only knew what kind of drama she'd raise after learning the truth. Cersei doubted Tyrion. He was the first to bring up the topic. It had to be the imp who convinced her Jaime to go with him. Cersei narrowed her eyes, irritation building. She hadn't had it for over a month, and it was getting on her nerves. Now she learned she wouldn't get any for who knew how long because her idiot brother had decided to play Night's Watch Ranger. And of course, hell would freeze over before she looked to her real husband to share her bed. Dear sister, if I could weaponize that fiery gaze of yours, maybe I could have saved humanity by now, Tyrion mused to himself. I have my eyes on you. Cersei gritted her teeth, but knowing she wouldn't get anything out of the monster she had to call her brother, she spat and turned around. By all means, do that. If the old stories are to be believed, the seven know we could use all that heat up at the wall. MC Pav. I missed something. I knew it but didn't realize it until now. Will was the reason the Starks found their direwolves in the story, they had to go out to execute him. I hadn't seen any wolves here. The butterfly effect. I didn't think it would be apparent this soon. Unlike some fanfics I read, where no matter what happens, the canon stays intact for the MC to reap the benefits, here it was immediately evident that things were changing, and there was no greater power holding the plot together. No direwolves. Bran didn't fall. Will survived. And Odin only knew what else I had already changed. This was proof that as I went further, I couldn't rely on the meager amount of canon I remembered. However, that was a problem for future me. My current problem was that Ned Stark had ultimately agreed to be the king's hand. I had hoped Bran's fall would stop him, but I guess that wasn't happening now. Thor. Suddenly, a voice broke my concentration. Looking up, I saw Benjen calling me. My brother has called for you, Benjen said as he readied his saddle. You're going somewhere. I looked around and noticed Benjen wasn't the only one. Many people were preparing to depart, even two of the Queen's brothers were in the group. We're leaving for Castle Black, Benjen replied, looking a bit apologetic. What? When was this decided? Why wasn't I told? I haven't even readied my damn horse yet. You should talk to my brother before doing that. Believe me, Benjen said and left, making me wonder what in Odin's name was going on. So, I made my way directly to Ned Stark's solar. As soon as I entered, I noticed he was completely alone, most likely waiting for me. Lord Stark, you called for me? I asked. Yes, Thor, come, sit, he said, and I did just that. Ned Stark didn't immediately speak. He took his time before finally opening his mouth. I still haven't shown my appreciation for what you did for the North. Without you, we might not have known about the threat of the White Walkers until they had grown much stronger. For that, the entire North is in your debt, Ned Stark said, making me nod unconsciously. Think nothing of it, Lord Stark. Surely you called me here for more than just gratitude. I have a request for you. You must have heard that I'll be going south soon to take the position of Hand of the King. Yes, I replied, already thinking about what he could ask for. Only one thing fit the bill. I want you to accompany us there, Ned Stark requested. There it was. I knew it, but why would he suddenly ask a stranger like me? May I ask why you want me to accompany you? Sigh. Starks don't fare well in the south. I will take a few of my men with me, but I still worry about my children's safety. Sansa, Arya, and even Bran will be going with me. I want you to look after them there, Ned Stark said, looking at me with an earnest expression. To me, this reason sounded weak. If he needed protection for his children, why not take more guards, or simply just not take the children? At least he could avoid taking both Arya and Bran. There was something else he wasn't telling me. Is that all? I asked firmly, looking him directly in the eyes. No, that's just one part of it. The reason I asked for you is that I don't have anyone there to help me. Forgive me, but I cannot disclose certain information as it could be dangerous for the source. However, I need someone to run some special errands for me. Someone strong and sharp. You are the best person for the job. Ned Stark's words made me wonder what he was talking about. Since when did he have any errands to run? Then I remembered, he must have received that note from Lisa Arryn about Jon Arryn's murder. Of course, I knew the truth about who really killed Jon Arryn. And you choose me over any of your trusted men because you're an honorable person, I can tell. Not to mention, you seem well aware of how to deal with highborn lords and ladies, Ned Stark replied, taking me by surprise. Did I really give off that vibe? But when I put myself in Thor's position, it wasn't that hard to imagine. I see, and I refuse. I refused almost immediately. What reason do you have to refuse? The same reason I asked you to stay back. The wall. The North needs a leader right now, and you are that leader. If you leave, who will your bannermen rally behind when winter comes knocking at the door? I'm not from this land, and this place is not my home, but if the old legends are true, the fight won't be between kingdoms or men, it will be between life and death. I have to take part. By staying behind, I might be able to help the Night's Watch somehow. And that's exactly why I believe you, Ned Stark said. Benjen told me you wish to fight the White Walkers despite having no ties to them or this land. That is exactly why I need you in the south. I don't wish to go south more than you do, however I have to. Why, because you king commands so? I asked with a hint of distaste. Yes, he nodded. Well, he's not my king. I shrugged. For a second Ned Stark narrowed his eyes, but seeing my eyes no wavering he sighed. It's not just King's order, North alone can't hold on if winter truly comes. It's not just fighting the White Walkers, North has to be ready for a long winter. Maesters and Citadel claims that this is the longest summer lasting 9 years, and after a long summer comes a lasting winter. North can hold on to few years of summer, but any longer and we will starve. We can't fight the undead when empty stomach, Ned Stark said. And for all purpose I have to say that I almost forgot about the condition of North in this all ordeal. He was right, just massing fighting power won't do. North has to get ready for a long winter as well. Surely the king will help if you ask. I asked with serious look on my face. Yes, he will, at least he will try. Robert's claim to the throne is only stable because of North, his own house and his alliance with Lannisters. Currently in King's Landing majority of power has already been shifted to the Lannisters. If I don't go there then the hand's position falls in their hands. Though they might be alliance, but I don't believe in those lions. Because the winter is coming, it's crucial that the King's Landing stay stable right now. I have to go, and I sure could use someone like you there, Ned Stark stated, making me fall into critical thinking. He wasn't wrong. I didn't even think whether North alone could fight against the Night King or not. North will need help, men power to food. And to get that help, it's crucial that it gets backing from King's Landing. And while I was thinking this, a notification appeared. Side quest. Wolf's Companion. Go south with Ned Stark and help him. Note, side quests are optional. Host could choose to accept or deny side quest on his will. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapter in my Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 44 comments 0 vote. Chapter 16. Towards King's Landing. What are you doing? Suddenly, a voice broke my concentration. My breathing was labored, and the heat was killing me. Dancing. Dancing. You're not training? Asked the little she-wolf, squinting her eyes. Quite observant of you, I replied, but anyone but a child could tell I was being sarcastic. Why are you naked? She asked with big eyes. I almost lost my footing while swinging the hammer. I'm not. I'm wearing pants, I replied, irritated. Half naked, then. Sigh, yeah, half naked. Why? Because it's hot when I train. It's not the North anymore to keep me cool, I said while going back to training. We had long left Winterfell. I ultimately ended up accepting Ned Stark's request. I'm getting paid for it, of course, but I didn't want to do it initially. The South, especially King's Landing, is full of deceitful unmen. Not my words, Benjen told me. Surely, those words came from experience. If it were my father and brother who the Mad King burned, I'd feel the same, after killing the damn dragon myself, that is. There was only one reason I decided to go along. The North needed help to counter what was coming. We were unaware of how strong the Night King was, how many undead he commanded, when he would attack. What were his weaknesses, and what was he truly after? If I knew that, I could shorten the war that was sure to come. If only I had watched the later seasons of Game of Thrones, then I would have known how they killed the Night King. However, as it stood, when the war came, it would be a prolonged one until I found answers to those questions. The North alone wouldn't stand that long. Ned Stark was right, we needed help. Thor, she suddenly spoke, breaking me out of my daze. Pardon, did the bear do that? Bear, they call you Bear Slayer now. Arya smiled as she said this. Did they? Quite an improvement from Hammer Lord, I rolled my eyes. Those at Castle Black started calling me that behind my back. They thought I didn't hear, but they underestimated Asgardian senses. Hammer Lord, Arya perked up like she had heard something funny. I shouldn't have said that. So, did he do it? Arya asked again. Who? The bear, the mark on your back. Did the bear do it? Arya stared at the strange scars on my back, intrigued. No, they're birthmarks. Never seen birthmarks like those before. Well, now you have. Run along, little lady. Let me train in peace. I smiled and went back to training. I'm no lady, Arya protested with a defiant look. But you're little, and you shouldn't be here alone, this far away from the king's entourage. I'm not alone, you're here. You'll protect me? She asked, ignoring everything else I said. Says who? I couldn't help but look at her with a strange expression. Father. He told me to look for you when he's not there. Arya chirped. Damn him. What? Arya looked at me with suspicious eyes, even after I just whispered that last part. Will you teach me how to use a sword? Arya suddenly asked. A sword? Do I look like a swordsman to you? Arya looked at me, then at my hammer, and then back at me again. A hammer then. What in Searcher's name was I thinking, agreeing to Ned Stark's request? Turning me into a nanny. Muttering, I went back to my training. Who's Searcher? Fire demon. Demons exist. Most certainly. Where? Hell. Where is hell? Muspelheim. Muspelheim. Arya couldn't even pronounce the word. Muspelheim, I repeated. Where is that? I stopped. Would murdering a highborn lady of Winterfell land me in any trouble? I'm seriously wondering that now. Arya, what are you doing here? Suddenly, another voice broke out, saving Arya from learning what Valar Dohaeris meant this early in the show. We both looked to see it was none other than Sansa with that idiot Joffrey. You. Sansa was about to speak, but her eyes landed on me, and a sizable blush appeared on her face. I was currently sweaty and topless. Even a dense person like me understood why she was blushing. Seems like I wouldn't be getting any more training today. Sighing, I walked up to my shirt and put it on. Finally, Sansa, who had been blushing and looking away, though I was sure she sneaked a few peeks here and there, relaxed. Disappointed, I got to see him train like that for hours. Arya looked at Sansa and boasted, maybe catching the disappointed look on Sansa's face unlike the rest. More like disturbing me for hours, I thought with irritation. She's been talking about you all night. Talking about how handsome you. Arya. Sansa's face flushed red, and she all but shouted, stopping her sister from revealing more. Joffrey, on the side, scowled when he heard this. Go back to the camp now, Sansa said, wearing a face too much like her mother's. I don't wanna. I got nothing to do there, even Bran isn't here. I can't play with anyone, Arya protested. Bran can't come. Maester Luwin said he has a fever. He couldn't travel with us. Sansa replied in frustration. This was another thing on my mind. Bran suddenly fell ill just before we were about to leave Winterfell. Coincidence? I don't think so. Someone didn't want Bran to leave Winterfell. I might have an idea who, but I couldn't be certain. And I had an inkling that if I wanted to learn more about the White Walkers and the Night King, I had to find this certain someone soon. What are you doing here? Joffrey scowled at me. Seems like that lesson from before was already forgotten. Can't blame him. Incest causes brain problems. What's a little memory loss? I wonder if hitting him on the head would fix it. Something you don't. Training my body, I replied with distaste. I tried to act civil around him and his mother, I really did. But that wasn't possible with them being a pair of insufferable fools. Ha, I'll be king one day. I don't have to train anything, Joffrey scoffed. How do you know you're going to be king? I asked, a smirk appearing on my face. Though I was taking this talk casually, Sansa on the side was getting worried. What kind of ridiculous question is that? My father is He's the king, I know. I cut him short. Why do you think he is the king? Joffrey was getting frustrated now. He wanted to lash out, but he remembered what happened last time. His memory wasn't that bad. Because he took it. He killed the dragon and took the Iron Throne. Exactly. How do you think he did it? By asking nicely. Joffrey had nothing to say. He wanted to come up with a good comeback but beat him to it. I doubt he would have been able to even if he had time though. He fight his way though. He was an warrior. I wonder what would have happened if he was like you. Let me tell you what. You'll be royally fucked up. And he was shut completely, though his face looked like he was about to throw with most unlogical fuss the loyal child could. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your prince, Joffrey shouted. No, you're not my prince. Your mother is not my queen. Your father is not my king. This is not my lands and they are not my people. And make no mistake, I'm not afraid of you or yours royal status. You'll face pain so insufferable that dead would look like mercy, so make sure you keep your distance. I walk up to him and put my hand on his shoulder, gripping it hard enough to almost make his face distort in pain and whisper to him. The last few parts Arya and Sansa didn't hear. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 36 comments 0 vote. Chapter 17. New Recruits and Lannister Brothers. Jon stood there as he observed his new brothers in the Night's Watch. All his ideals of serving an honorable order that guarded the realm of men were shattered the moment he saw them. Murderers, rapists, thieves, he saw only them. No honor, no valor. It's a mistake, Jon muttered to himself as he dodged an attack from one of his fellow Night's Watch recruits. He didn't let his thoughts dull his movements and immediately parried, following up with a punch to the man's face. They didn't get much rest, as all new recruits were thrown into training immediately. The one conducting it was Alliser Thorne, and if the others were to be believed, this time, the training for new recruits had been made stricter manifold. Jon was able to handle the recruits easily enough. It wasn't hard for someone who had learned swordsmanship in a castle. However, he could feel it, something was wrong here. Unlike in the TV series or the books, here, Alliser wasn't breathing down Jon's neck from the start. Perhaps it had something to do with what was inside the cellar within Castle Black. Even after Thor had caused quite a commotion upon his arrival, many within Castle Black had yet to lay eyes on the White Walker. Mere word of mouth wasn't enough for these lowlifes to believe their sworn brothers. This was especially true for the new recruits. The Lord Commander didn't want word to spread too far, fearing more defections. There had already been many after Thor brought the undead. The new recruits were the most likely to flee. Thus, the cellar was off limits to almost everyone. No one was allowed near it, and for good reason. Those with sharp ears could hear it at night, alongside the howling wind, a voice so unnatural it kept them awake. Jon could feel it, there was tension in the castle. He wasn't an idiot, he knew something was going on. Both his father and Uncle Benjen hadn't wanted him to join the watch, but he had come nonetheless. After arriving, he had heard whispers among the brothers. He couldn't help but remember what that man had told him. To the wall, planning on taking the black. Jon recalled a muscular, handsome blonde man walking up to him while he was preparing to depart from Winterfell. I see you didn't, Jon observed the man. He was imposing the moment he arrived. Imposing and charming. Yes, I haven't. I wouldn't join a group of murderers, thieves, and rapists even if it was my last option. The Night's Watch is an honorable order. We protect the realm of men. Jon immediately got agitated and replied. Says who? A boy who hasn't yet stepped outside this castle's walls. Thor glared at Jon, making him calm down. I came from there, Jon Snow. I know the reality. The black is not the order it once was. I came here to you because Benjen asked me to. He seems to be tired of you pestering to join the Night Watch. My mind is set, I'm sure. Go ahead, Thor interrupted him. But before that, ask yourself one thing. Do you need the wall, or does the wall need you? Because if it's the former, you won't last long when the time comes. Thor had turned away after saying those words. Jon hadn't understood what he meant then. But now, maybe, he was beginning to connect a few dots. While heading back to their quarters, he asked one of his fellow recruits, what's in the cellar? Cha! A terrible sound rang out in the dark cellar, sending a chill creeping beneath their skin. The dull, damp walls seemed to vibrate every time the creature from hell let out its unnatural scream. By the seven, what are we looking at? Jaime Lannister muttered in disbelief. He had known what to expect when he decided to come to Castle Black. He hadn't believed the old stories, even after seeing a severed hand move on its own. However, now, he had no choice but to accept the truth. He had never claimed to be a man of knowledge. He wasn't well studied, nor was he always right. He couldn't call himself wise. But for once in his life, he was disappointed to realize he had been wrong. In front of him stood a spawn from hell itself, just as described by that man. Thor had warned them, but Jaime hadn't believed him, until now. Cersei hadn't been happy when he announced his trip to Castle Black, but at least now, he had a good reason to justify his actions. That's a White Walker, the first of its kind seen in thousands of years. They were the reason the wall was built and why the Night's Watch exists. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont spoke with a stern expression. He had clearly had time to come to terms with the fact that the childhood tales of White Walkers were no myth. Did that man really capture it? Jaime asked, now wondering whether he could have done the same. He had never fought Thor, but he had seen what the man had done to the hound and that bear. Would he be able to fight a White Walker? Before the Lord Commander could ask who Jaime was referring to, Tyrion, standing to the side, finally spoke up. Have you found any way to kill it? Any information about their numbers? How many we can expect? Do we know anything at all? Tyrion asked. He was just as horrified as the others, but he was always prepared to accept the unexpected. Being a dwarf had taught him that, who knew when his father might decide he was no longer needed. Jeor Mormont glanced at the imp with a steady gaze before finally replying. We don't. Besides the meager knowledge we possess from the old tales, we know nothing. I wanted to assemble a scouting party soon, but I can't leave the castle unattended, not with that thing here. Why? Afraid your entire order will be wiped out by the time you return? Tyrion asked, his usual flair and mockery laced in his words. The other way around, Jeor Mormont replied sternly, unfazed by the jibe. So you have found a way to kill it? Tyrion asked, a little hopeful. No, more like, we don't know. The stories speak of fire and dragonglass, but we can't test them on it just yet. Why not? Shouldn't we know if we even stand a chance against these things? We'll be sitting ducks, ready to be slaughtered if we don't find a way to kill them. Jaime asked heatedly. Ever since he had seen that severed hand, he hadn't been able to rest. Now that he knew they existed, he was even more anxious. You think I don't want to know that? Jeor Mormont raised his voice to cut Jaime off. You Southerners know nothing of how long we Northerners have kept the wall safe. So don't dictate to me what I should and shouldn't do. His outburst finally brought silence to the room, giving Tyrion a chance to speak. I agree, Tyrion said, making Jaime glare at him as if asking whose side he was on. I understand why you haven't tested it. If we didn't believe it at first, chances are others won't either. This here is our only proof to convince the lords of the Seven Kingdoms that a real threat exists beyond the wall, not just some bloody wildlings. He looked at Jaime, who, too, was beginning to understand why they were keeping the White Walker alive. However, we need to know how many are out there. We need to learn how to kill them. Do you have any plans, Lord Commander? Tyrion asked, his gaze steady. Though they had initially been suspicious, both Lannisters now understood the gravity of the situation. The North might be the White Walker's first target, but how long until they reached the South, to the Castle Rock, or even King's Landing? They knew this news had to be passed to the Lords of the North soon. A war is coming, a war we are not prepared for. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 22 comments 0 vote. Chapter 18. At King's Landing. The never-ending road finally came to an end. A good thing, because if it hadn't, I would have made sure there wouldn't be any King's Road left to travel. Even a god needs his rest. I learned that firsthand. My back wasn't very happy after this almost month-long ride from Winterfell to King's Landing. And for what? To smell human shit rotting in the streets or to see human lives treated as nothing more than livestock. A genuine anger was building inside me, and I could tell this wasn't just the Thor in me. What in Odin's name is this foul smell? Arya crinkled her nose and covered her mouth without any dignity. Sansa was better, at least more ladylike in her approach. Stop doing that, I replied with a straight face, though it was hard to maintain my indifference. She was getting better at getting under my skin. As their private bodyguard, I was with them almost all the time. Though this was nothing but a cover for my presence, according to Ned Stark, it didn't save me from Arya's endless ravings. I had to keep my horse mostly close to their cart to appear like a guard. I could see Arya fidgeting constantly, annoying Sansa and Septa Mordane the entire way. Just like the Starks said, she had too much wolf blood in her to stand still for long. The girl was cute, but I wasn't in a stage of my life where I could find her anything but annoying. Thor's plus 1,500 years of experience didn't help in this regard. Sansa was pleasant in comparison, if she wasn't peeking at me every 2 seconds when she thought I wasn't looking. And that old Septa, well, I had no idea what crime I committed, but she was glaring daggers at me like I had caught her and Lady Stark making out. Why does it smell like that? Arya asked, and I ignored her with passion. Learned a quality of life lesson this past month. If I ignored her first few questions, she'd eventually get bored and leave me alone. I turned my head away and saw the gates of King's Landing as we passed through them. Inside, the smell hit even harder. "Come on, settle them in." Ned Stark got up and instructed the girls to come out of the cart and get settled. But before that could even happen, I saw a noble-looking man approaching him with a paper in hand. Looks like the game has already started. I immediately dismounted my horse and made my way over, abandoning my fake guard duty the first chance I got. "Lord Stark, there has been a small council meeting called. Your presence is requested," the man said, handing Ned the paper. Ned Stark frowned. After a month of traveling, this was the last thing he wanted to deal with. But duty called. "Lead the way, I'll join." "No, you won't." Just as Ned Stark spoke, he heard a voice from behind. That was me, of course. The messenger turned to see a tall, muscular man with blonde hair approaching. He had an imposing presence and carried a short hammer in his hands, unlike any weapon the messenger had ever seen. "Excuse me." Ned Stark sent a glare my way. High Lords, no matter how honorable, like Ned Stark here, don't like being defied. But upon seeing that I wasn't backing down, staring him straight in the eye, Ned hesitated for a moment and that when I responded. "The hand of the king is tired. It's a long way from Winterfell to King's Landing. Tell the council he'll join them once he's rested a little," I said directly to the messenger, much to his disbelief. "Well, go tell them." I deepened my voice and spoke with authority, nearly startling the man. Even Ned looked momentarily taken aback. The messenger immediately nodded and sped away. "What are you doing?" Ned Stark's anger flared, but I had no intention of backing off. "Exactly what you asked me to do, help you play the game. Here's the first rule, play it on your own terms. Don't listen to a damn thing others say, most of it will be lies. Get some rest and prepare your mind before heading to the council. You're going to need it." I held my gaze firm. Ned had to admit that what I said was true, but making them wait like this didn't feel right. He was about to argue, but I was done here. "Come on, girls, get up. Finding a decent-smelling room is not going to be any easier than the journey from Winterfell to here." I turned and started helping them. Ned was stunned to see me outright ignoring him. Shaking his head, he just accepted it. He was quite tired himself, and the messenger had already gone. Resting for a bit wouldn't hurt. Just as he was about to leave, he heard me speak from behind. "And one more thing, in King's Landing, don't watch the mouths, Lord Stark. Watch the hands. What you hear will be vastly different from what really happens. Are you telling me the crown is 3 million in debt?" Ned Stark was shocked upon learning of the extravagant tourney his friend was planning in his name. But what shook him more was the actual state of the kingdom's finances. "I'm telling you the crown is 6 million in debt," Petyr Baelish corrected with his usual smirk. "How did this happen?" Ned asked, disbelief evident on his face. Only now did he realize how he would have reacted if he had gone to the small council meeting without taking a moment to rest first. "It's the king's job to spend the money, while the hand arranges it," Baelish replied. I refused to believe Jon Arryn would have let this happen. Ned immediately defended the man who had been a father to him in all but blood. "Lord Arryn gave wise and prudent advice, but I'm afraid his grace doesn't always listen," Grand Maester Pycelle said with a weary tone. "Counting coppers he calls it," Renly added with irritation. Eddard Stark sighed. "I'll talk to him. The kingdom can't bear this expense." He realized now that he truly needed to be prepared for these small council meetings. Unlike in the books and TV series, the condition of the capital was more important to the North in this version. Stark's personal interests were tied to it. If he expected the capital to aid the North in times of trouble, he couldn't let things spiral out of control. "Maybe I should get Thor involved. He seems to have a good grasp on ruling and administration. Only the old gods know how the capital will help the North in this condition," Ned thought with irritation. "One more thing, Lord Stark. King Robert has personally said to allow the man you brought with you to take part in the tourney," Varys said. "What man?" "The one who beat the Hound. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 20 comments 0 vote. Chapter 19. Bran's awake. "Damn, another miss," Bran cursed under his breath. His mother had told him not to swear, but he couldn't help it. No matter what he did, he couldn't seem to hit the target. The bow and arrow just weren't made for him. How is Arya so good at this? Bran pouted, pulling another arrow from the quiver before resting it on the bow and taking aim. Just as he was about to shoot, he suddenly heard a sound. He looked around but saw nothing. He was alone in the training range. His father, his two sisters, even Jon, had already left for King's Landing and Night's Watch. Rickon was the only one left for him to play with. Ignoring the earlier sound, he pulled the string of the bow again, taking aim, only for the sound to return. Once again, there was nothing there. But this time, he decided to check where the sound was coming from. As he ventured further, it led him to a dark corner of Winterfell he didn't even know existed. Hesitantly, he moved forward, only to see a bird sitting on top of a barrier in the shadows. A raven, a three-eyed raven. The moment Bran looked into the raven's eyes, he felt his consciousness fading. Lightheadedness assaulted him. What's happening to me? Wait, who are you? No, wait, Bran shouted, and that was when his eyes shot open. He jolted upright, his breathing ragged, and found himself in his bed, surrounded by two people. He looked into the face of his mother, who had been sleeping next to his bed but suddenly awoke with a start at his outburst. Bran, the moment she realized who had made the noise, her eyes widened in shock at seeing her son awake. How are you? Are you feeling any pain? Do you need food? Wait a minute, let me call Maester Luwin. She almost stumbled, too overwhelmed by the sight of her son waking up. Even Maester Luwin had been unable to determine what kind of fever Bran was suffering from. At one point, his body had started heating up uncontrollably, and he no longer woke up after falling asleep. At first, they thought it was just a normal fever, but after her husband left, Bran's condition had worsened. She had prayed to the Seven for hours to protect her son, sitting beside him day and night. Gods be good, she whispered, checking his temperature. He was normal now. Wait here, I'll call Maester Luwin. She hurriedly stood up and rushed out. Bran was still struggling to process what had just happened. Once Maester Luwin checked him and declared him healthy, Catelyn Stark finally sighed in relief. Just as Maester Luwin was about to leave and complete his sleep, Bran, lost in thought, suddenly spoke. Maester Luwin. Yes. Luwin responded. Catelyn tensed, fearing that her son was in pain. Are there any books about the history and faiths of Westeros? History and faiths? Why do you suddenly need that? Both Luwin and Catelyn looked at Bran with puzzled expressions. I just want to learn a bit about history, that's all, Bran replied. Both Catelyn and Luwin exchanged looks, their expressions tinged with concern before Luwin nodded. I'll have someone bring you the Gospel of the Seven. No, Bran's sudden response startled both of them. Pardon, not just the Seven. Bring me all the books about history and faiths, all faiths from Westeros and Essos too. Bran's tone was firm, making the two adults exchange concerned glances again. Do we have them? Bran asked again, his urgency growing. Yes, but it's a ponderous read. You won't find it to your taste. I'll bring you. But before Luwin could finish, Bran interrupted him. No, I want to read it. What's the name of the book? The Lineage and History of Great Houses of the Seven Kingdoms, Grand Maester Pycelle said as he pulled out an old, dusty book from his study, placing it on the table with some difficulty. Why did Jon Arryn want to read this book? Ned Stark asked as he flipped it open, only to find tedious descriptions of noble houses and their members. The book contained detailed records of the members of all the great houses, their appearances, birth dates, parentage, and even places of birth. Seeing its contents, Ned Stark already felt repulsed. He turned to the Grand Maester. Did Jon Arryn say why he wanted to read this book? No, my Lord Hand. And I never thought to ask him. Pycelle shrugged, clearly unbothered by it all. Unlike in the main story, where Ned Stark was bogged down by council duties, delaying his investigation into Jon Arryn's death, here, he had begun investigating immediately. He wouldn't voice it, but he knew he wouldn't have been able to do this if he had followed the council's calls all the time. Thor's advice had been valuable. So, after the very first council meeting, he had gone straight to Pycelle and obtained the book. Did Jon say anything more? Any last words before his passing? Ned Stark asked, already resigning himself to reading the book despite his reluctance. He kept saying one thing. He repeated it over and over. He said, the seed is strong. The seed is strong, what does that mean? I'm afraid I know no better than you do, Lord Stark, Pycelle said with another shrug. Ned Stark wanted to voice his suspicions about Jon Arryn's murder. However, remembering Thor's warning to trust no one, he held his tongue and took his leave. As he walked to his chambers, 1,000 thoughts clouded his mind. The most pressing was whether he was wasting his time. Should he focus on preparing the North for winter instead of chasing a dead man's secrets? But he couldn't shake the feeling that he owed it to Jon Arryn. That man had been like a father to him. He had chosen to protect both him and Robert when they were mere wards. When the Mad King demanded their heads, Jon Arryn had gone to war to protect them. If there was any truth in Lysa's letter, then he would find out who had killed his father in all but blood, and get him the justice he deserved. 1, 2, 3, 4, Thor's deep, resonant voice echoed in the open balcony. Keep the rhythm in mind. Remember, you don't have to move on every beat, but the beat will help you track your footwork initially. Ned Stark saw Thor training his youngest daughter, Arya, in swordsmanship. Why am I not swinging the sword? It's not sword's play if all I'm doing is moving around, Arya complained. Foolish child, half of swordsmanship isn't in the sword but in how you move. A stationary target is a dead target. You have to be nimble on your feet, keep your balance, and shift your weight properly to deliver strong and true strikes, Thor said firmly. Exactly, I couldn't have said it better myself. Suddenly both of them heard Ned Stark spoke from the side. Thor already knew someone was there but he just didn't know who. Oh, not you too, Arya whined. Thor's teaching you true Arya. One must learn how to crawl before walking. Foot and pawing is the foundation of swordsmanship. Listen to him, Ned Stark said, making Arya grumble but back to his training. She was holding the sword but only for show. Her current job was nothing but move around and get used to that while holding a sword. I thought you don't do swords. Ned Stark suddenly looked at Thor with intrigue. Oh, he did, just didn't wanted to teach me. Arya immediately protested from the side. Oh, then how you convince him? Ned Stark asked with amusement. Know his face. Easy, I'm to let him alone and not disturb him outside our training hour unless it's an emergency. Arya repeated why Thor drilled in her as a payment for teaching her. Shush, don't let you do the same training on mud. Thor glared, putting Arya back to work. Thought you don't do swords. Ned Stark smiled at his youngest daughter and then turned to Thor. I learn all sorts of weapons while growing up, hammer just happens to be my favorite. Thor replied offhandedly. Ned Stark once again wondered what was his background, since it can't be anything less than a son of a Lord Paramount. Maybe even royalty, the way he acts sometimes around others. Good, you're gonna need that for the tourney, Ned Stark said, not hosting his suspicions about Thor's background. What tourney? Thor turned his head towards him with confusion. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 27 comments 0 vote. Chapter 20. A Visitor at Night. In the dark of night, the door of the room slowly opened. Silence broke slightly when a person slowly entered. He didn't move immediately. He waited, observing whether his target was awake, suspicious of his presence. But upon seeing no movement, he slowly inched closer towards the bed where his target was sleeping peacefully. Without making any noise, the man took out a dagger from his backside and unsheathed it, looking to end this in a single strike. But just as he was about to strike, he felt someone catch his hand. The darkness in the room didn't allow him to see who this person was, but he immediately reacted, wanting to get free and, if possible, silence this person. However, no matter what he did, the grip was so strong that he couldn't even budge his hand, let alone free it. Before he knew it, another strong arm grabbed him by his neck, choking him and lifting him up. Panic finally started to settle in upon seeing his life in danger. He started to thrash, but to no avail. The grip of the man was like iron bars holding him down. Oh, wait a minute. Suddenly, the man holding him said to his confusion, and he felt the grip loosening. Huff, huff, he started to take deep breaths. That few seconds of struggle for air had almost left him breathless. I have something better than just choking you, the man said to his horror. He tried to move again, but his neck and hand were held down too tightly by the man that even a single inch of movement felt like a Herculean task. For a few seconds, nothing happened, confusing him, but he was glad nonetheless. It takes some time. I'm still new to this, he heard the man say, confusing him even more, until he felt a sharp pulsing sensation in his entire body. At first, it was nothing more than a mere trembling, but then his body went beyond his control, shaking like a ball tumbling down the staircase. Pain so unimaginable ran inside him that he lost the little voice he had while his mind went numb. It was like lightning had struck him. His eyes went bloodshot before he could see the face of the man who killed him, handsome and imposing, staring down at him with those blue glowing eyes like a deity. Me, mercy, that was the only thing he could utter at this sight. Very well, he replied, and with a cracking noise, his misery was over as he died with a simple break of his neck. And as the man died, I could only see his lifeless form in my hands. It was so easy to kill him, just inserting more pressure where I was holding him by his neck, and it broke. This was the first time I had killed someone, and I didn't know what to feel. I thought I'd feel disgusted, repulsed, anything that would be normal for a teenager from Earth who had never killed before. But all I felt was indifference. Thor has killed more than the days I have lived, but it's supposed to be him, not me. So why this level of mental calmness and indifference? A conflicting feeling rose inside me, only to die down almost immediately once my eyes narrowed onto the assassin sent to kill me. I don't like killing, but if that's the only way to survive, then I won't shy away from it. I'll be the god of thunder if this world forces me to be one. My voice steeled, and I finally let go of the man's body. I was lucky the assassin decided to come when I was practicing my lightning manipulation. My Asgardian senses picked up the man's approach the moment he was outside the door. Leaving the matter of what to do about the corpse for the time being, I bent down to pick up the dagger that the man had used. Valyrian steel, I muttered as the rippling patterns on the dagger's blade appeared under the moonlight. Quite an assassin he must have been to carry something like this, or perhaps he just had a generous patron. I muttered, realizing there was only one known Valyrian steel dagger in the entire story. Seems like someone royal needs me gone. Haha, coward. I shall keep this. Sometimes a hammer alone is not sufficient, after all. As for how I should return this favor, well, all in due time. At least I learned today that my lightning could kill, and that's without using Mjolnir. Littlefinger, the spider, the queen, and that idiot Joffrey, I don't see anyone else besides these four having any reason to assassinate me. Both Baelish and Varys don't have any real enmity with me as of now, however, ruling them out from the equation would be foolish. My main suspicion still lay with Joffrey and Cersei, though considering both as one wouldn't be wrong either. Now comes the real question, what should I do about this? By the old me or the new, this enmity can't be forgotten, but acting against them openly could lead to a fallout between the North and the South. If a war starts, then the North won't be getting any support during the long winter. Can King's Landing even help the North? I pondered to myself. I knew that the capital's treasury was empty and that it had a huge debt to the Lannisters and the Iron Bank. Ned Stark made that clear the last time I asked him. In this situation, Robert wouldn't do anything besides adding more numbers to the wall, which, without supplies that the North would lack even to feed its own people, would only turn out to be a liability. In case war doesn't start like it did in the story, the North's problems would still remain unattended. Ned Stark, even as Hand of the King, has no power without substantial money in the capital. Of course, the Lannisters could help, but would they? Hoping for aid from the likes of Cersei and her siblings was preposterous. Regarding the Lannisters' wealth, only Tywin Lannister, the old lion, could make a decision. Would he listen to his children? Most likely not. Only him acting on his own accord could solve this situation, and even that is unlikely. He wouldn't believe in White Walkers until he saw them himself. Even if he decided to help, which is a big if, he would definitely put forth conditions that would break the Seven Kingdoms' economy for years to come. So, staying here in the lion's den is as worthless as I previously thought. And yet I had to come because if any of the Starks died here, a war would be inevitable. The North can't entangle in a war right now, not on my watch. Now that I know there won't be any significant help from King Robert, my first objective should be to take all the Starks back to Winterfell, unhurt and unscratched. But how, Thor? Just as I was thinking to myself and playing with the new toy I got from my friend last night, I heard Ned Stark call me. Yes, I'm listening. I want you to find anything you can about Jon Arryn's death. Just like you said, there are a lot of eyes on me, I can't do this myself. Ned Stark said with a serious tone. Why are you suddenly interested in him? I asked. I didn't like where this was going. Because I feel there was foul play in his death. I can only get answers here. You have other men. Why must you send me? Send Jory, he's competent. He is, but he don't know how to play the game unlike you. Part of the reason I brought you is because I knew you can handle it. I don't know how, but you seems you have knowledge and experience on how to handle this matters. Can I truth this task to you? Ned Stark asked with serious tone. Are you forgetting that there is far more concerning things than an old man's death? I know the man was dear to you, but you can't overlook your other duties for this. The entire North right now depends on whether you can bring some help for the war to come. I didn't answer him but rather asked a question of myself. Sigh, I'm looking into it. Robert haven't given me much to work with here. The treasure is empty. In this condition even the king can't provide much assistance to North. Ned Stark frowned. He too soon realized that he might not get any help from the south at this rate. Now he found himself caged, not sure where to go. I so much wanted to yell at this fool to just go back, but I restrained myself. There was no reason for violence. Knowing Ned Stark's personality, he won't listen me. I have to create a situation where he is forced to go back. Suddenly I saw the big book he had on his table. Like thunder an idea struck my mind. Thousands of thoughts ran in my mind and I knew that this was the best answer to my troubles. Very well, I'll find about his death, though Arya might not like me stopping her training this soon. You might and well find a good trainer for her. The girl has her heart in learning sword, you should nurture it. I said and stood up, making Ned Stark fall into contemplation whether he should look for a teacher for her youngest daughter. That's a fancy dagger you got there. Just as I was about to leave he called from behind. Apparently he too saw the patterns in the blade, not to mention the dragon bone handle which even I just recently found out. A friend gave it to me. It was last night, in fact, came in the shade of dark when I should have been asleep. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't. Ned Stark immediately frowned. He understood the implications all right. Where is he? Sewers. Ned Stark frowned further. Don't worry, he has found his faith, now he only follows the light. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 28 comments 0 vote. Chapter 21. Handsome foreigner and rude Esser knight. How are you faring here, my dear? I assume the capital is to your liking. Cersei asked the Stark girl. If it were up to her, she would never let a primitive girl from the north marry her Joffrey, but she couldn't do anything about it. It was the king's will. Yes, your grace. Sansa, who was called over to have dinner with the queen, could do nothing but nod her head. It wasn't that she didn't like it here, but it wasn't any better than Winterfell either. She had no opinion regarding this. She only came because her father and the Fat King decided to marry her off to the prince. Sansa was overjoyed, but if only the prince looked anything like Thor. She tried hard, but no matter what, she couldn't replace the image of the handsome, muscular foreigner with the prince in her mind. She got an earful from Septa Mordane for this. Don't be near that man. What if someone sees you? You're promised to the prince now, she said, while Sansa found Septa herself sneaking a few peeks at him. Good. Apparently, you're the only Stark who does. It's nice that you're adapting well. I see Joffrey is very fond of you, Cersei said with a fake, coy smile. At this, Sansa only lowered her head in shyness. Tell me about that foreigner. He's been your guard all this time, has he not? Cersei suddenly asked, taking Sansa by surprise. Your grace, Sansa stuttered. I heard from Joffrey you blushed seeing him train. Cersei's tone changed, her eyes now glaring at Sansa, making her almost shake in place. It's not like that, your grace. He was bare-chested while training when both the prince and I got there, that's why, believe me. Sansa stuttered to say anything. Of course, I believe you, dear, and within seconds, her tone changed again. Cersei returned to her fake smile. Sansa visibly relaxed at this. Her face had almost gone pale earlier. The poor girl was being played with like a toy in the queen's hands. I was once your age too. I know the allure of strong, handsome men. The queen narrowed her eyes, her words now teasing Sansa like an adult seeing through a junior's mind. Sansa stiffened again. She tried hard to suppress her upcoming blush but failed miserably as the queen reminded her how handsome Thor was. How was he? Cersei asked suddenly. Your Grace. Sansa looked at her with a confused face. That man, how was he, bare-chested? Cersei asked while taking a sip of her wine. Sansa's blush deepened. She felt like she was talking with one of her friends about boys back in Winterfell. It was a dangerous thought, even considering Cersei Lannister as a friend, but ignorance is bliss. At first, she hesitated, but seeing the Queen looking at her intently, she finally spoke. He's handsome, has strong muscles, Sansa said in a small voice. She had no idea why the Queen of all people was asking her this, but she didn't want to continue this talk any longer. He's tall, and there is no fat anywhere on his body, Sansa said, thinking maybe this much was fine. I see. What more? Cersei clearly didn't think so. He has a deep voice, long blonde hair, and blue eyes. Broad shoulders with well-defined muscles. At this point, Sansa felt like she was repeating herself, already out of things to say about the prince of her dreams. What more? The Queen took another sip while slowly caressing the glass like it was her lover, her eyes in a daze, but she was listening to Sansa with concentration. He has a mark on his back. Men like him often have those. They describe their victories in wars, Cersei replied while still looking at the glass in her hand. She had seen a few on Jaime too. He didn't have many, but the few he did, he often showed with pride. They were a sign of his skill in battle and his victories. Oh, how desperate she was to be in her brother's embrace now. More than 2 months, and she was almost on the verge of madness. These urges her body brought her, a woman's need. She could have any man she wanted, but not just any man was worthy of her. So she waited for the man she loved to return. But it was a hard-fought struggle as time passed. Jaime will pay when he comes back, for leaving his queen like this. No, it wasn't a wound. It was more like a birthmark. It was strange, like a spider's web or a tree's branches spreading out. Tree's branches. Cersei, who had been in a daze, suddenly looked at Sansa with confusion, like she had heard a joke. But then, her dazed expression cleared up. Sansa, my dear, could you explain that mark in more detail? Cersei asked. MC Pav, your Sir Hugh, I asked a blonde man who seemed to be preparing for the upcoming tourney. He was currently at the jousting field, measuring the field distance with his foot. Hugh didn't even look at me, just waved his hand before moving forward. I saw the man who ignored me with a little resentment, but since I was here to ask a question, I calmed myself down. Anger wouldn't do me any good here. I have some questions I want answers to. I walked up to him again and spoke, finally making him stop and look at me for the first time. I could see a little surprise on his face upon seeing me, then his eyes went to the hammer I carried. I'm sorry, Your Esser? He asked, maybe thinking I was someone important. Only now did I realize that looking good had several advantages. I'm no knight. I want to ask you some questions about, I started, but he cut me off midway. Oh, well, you see, I am one. And I'm busy, so later. He ignored me again and kept moving. Maybe a little rashness is needed to deal with his kind. I hadn't even realized my hands clenched at Mjolnir. A smile appeared on my face for some vile reason. This man here was Jon Arryn's squire and a recently promoted knight. Maybe that where his haughty attitude comes from. Knowing the plot has its advantages, I didn't needed Littlefinger's help to find him. Even after not remembering his name or his looks, I found him by just looking for Jon Arryn's squire. Ned Stark wanted to know what happened to Jon Arryn. Well, he'll get to know it, but on my terms. I'll have my revenge with whoever sent this dagger to me, but not right now. Besides, I'm not Sir Tionley who exactly sent the assassin outright, having some very strong presumptions. My main concern is about convincing Ned Stark to go back south, and perhaps the canon is not altered enough still now for me to use it for my goal. I heard you were participating in the tourney. I can't wait to see your skills in action. It's been a while since I fought someone worthy. I smiled and walked up to him once again, attracting his attention. You're in the tourney? He asked with a suspicious look on his face. I'll be taking part in both jousting and fighting after that. Though I have to say I got not much experience with jousting before, would you mind helping me out? I asked with a big smile. Just as he was about to retort and refuse, Sir Hugh felt a powerful blow at his back which almost threw him to the ground. He looked at me like I just hit him with the hammer, but as his eyes went to my hammer he realized that all did was to slam his back with my other hand. What in the seven is this strength? Hugh now felt uncomfortable seeing my left hand went from his back to his back neck, grabbing it firmly before I said, "Let get you a drink, in the name of our new friendship," I said with hearty laughter before practically dragging the man along with me to the corner, away from prying eyes. Slamming him to the wall, I grab him by the mouth before stomping on his toe, earning a delightful while from the man, which I of course muffled by blocking his mouth. "Do you know what you're due?" he shouted as soon as I removed my hand from his mouth, though still holding him against the wall. "Aha!" He let out another yell when my foot found its way to another of his toe. "You'll speak only what I want to hear, or you still have 8 more finger before I break the ones in your hands." He looked at me with pain and fear-filled eyes before nodding. "Good man, and hear people sprout nonsense about violence not being the way." Can't help but a smile appear on my face. "Unfortunately for you, my new friend, I'm not the one you have to speak to. Let get you to him first," I said before dragging the man away with me. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 25 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 22. Queen's Rage, Esser Knights a Fake and Jaime the Brave. "My queen, you called for me." An old servant woman stood in front of Cersei with a frightened look on her face. She had served in the Red Keep for half of her life, and never once had she felt the dread she did now in front of the queen. "What's your name?" Cersei asked, an ugly expression on her face. "Mary, your grace," the old woman spoke with a trembling voice. "Do you remember who used to tend to me back when I was first with a child?" Cersei asked, looking at her with fire in her eyes. "Your grace, perhaps we have mistaken something." A voice attempted to interject, but a glare from Cersei shut him up. It was none other than Grand Maester Pycelle, standing there with sweat forming on his forehead. "Why, yes, your grace. Besides me, there were 2 more maids who looked after you back then," Mary replied, stuttering. She had tended to the queen back when she wasn't this old. Now, she no longer had the energy she once did, so she had been replaced by younger maids. "Call both of them here," Cersei commanded. "Your grace, they are no longer here. Mila died a few years ago, a fever took her, and as for May, she left King's Landing a long time ago." Mary spoke hesitantly, unsure why the queen was so angry, but praying to the 7 that she wasn't the target of her wrath. As soon as she finished speaking, silence spread through the room. Cersei looked at her with piercing eyes. "Where?" Mary didn't respond, she didn't know. "Where did she go?" Cersei asked again, raising her voice. I don't know, your grace. She didn't tell me before leaving. I don't know." Mary kept her head down, clenching her skirt, trying to look smaller. Only the 7 knew how she had found herself in this situation. For a few seconds, no response came from Cersei before she finally asked, "Do you recall why she would have left? Any particular reason?" This time, her voice was calm. Mary immediately started recalling everything she could. Your grace, I do recall her quitting her job here long before she left. We used to live near each other. After she left, she had no job. She struggled, and soon she had to leave the city. What more?" Cersei wasn't satisfied with only this much. I can't say for sure, but there was gossip that she slept with a noble and got herself pregnant. That's why she left her job. I can't be sure, but when she left, she had a babe with her, only a few months old." Mary stuttered, recalling everything she could. "Is that all?" Cersei asked. "I swear to the 7, your grace, I don't know anything else." Mary was now trembling. The longer she stayed, the more she felt like she was in a lion's den, being stared down by a lioness. "Get out." After a long pause, Cersei spoke, and Mary was happy to rush out as soon as possible. "Your grace, I think there is a misunderstanding." I myself checked. Pycelle started, but Cersei cut him off. "Misunderstanding? It's a misunderstanding, is it?" Cersei's glare toward Pycelle became fiery. "My firstborn's body is missing from its grave, and you think it's a misunderstanding?" She all but roared, making Pycelle flinch. That morning, the queen had suddenly called him, interrogating him about her firstborn. Everyone knew the queen's firstborn hadn't survived long after birth. This was the first time in years she had even brought up the subject. She had asked to be taken to his grave. She had never done that before, never even knew where her firstborn was buried. So they had taken her. Then, strangely enough, she had wanted to dig up the grave. Even for a woman like her, this was too much. But it was the queen's order, so they had done it, only to find the grave empty. You gave the body of my dead child to that bloody whore to bury. I want her. I don't care how, you bring her before me. If you don't, I swear, Pycelle, I'll have your head on a pike and everyone in this damn castle if I don't find out what happened to his corpse. What are you looking at? Go find out. Where is my child? Here he is. Ned Stark was startled when his study room's door opened without a prior knock, and he saw Thor drag a man in, his face covered. Who's he? Ned Stark looked at the man. Not recognizing him, he turned to Thor. Jon Arryn's squire, recently knighted just after his death. The Seven have been kind to him, he just acquired a full-plate steel armor, castle forged. Fits him like he was born for it. Lovely craftsmanship. Thor spoke with his usual smile, but Ned understood the implication. You were Jon's squire? Ned asked Hugh, who remained silent. He knew who stood before him, but if he opened his mouth, things would turn out badly for him. Speak, we are all friends here. No need to be shy, Thor encouraged while placing his hand behind the man's neck. Ned saw Hugh visibly flinch. He wondered what Thor had done to the man. Maybe putting him on this task wasn't the right decision, Ned thought, but soon shook his head. This was necessary, and he knew it. Tell me, what do you know about Jon's death? Ned Stark asked in a calm tone, while Thor sat a little further away, playing with his newly acquired dagger in front of Sir Hugh, just to apply more pressure. I don't know anything. He was fine that morning, and then suddenly, the fever attacked him. It all happened so fast that, Hugh was speaking when Thor threw the dagger. It missed Hugh by only a hair's length and dug into the wall. Apologies. Been a while since I used a dagger. Thought I could use some practice. What do you say, Sir Hugh? Mind helping me out? I'm sure you'd be pretty good at it. Ned Stark was about to interject, but Hugh spoke. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me. Hugh sputtered. Nothing to do with what? Ned Stark seized the opportunity. The poison. I don't know how he consumed the poison. I swear to the Seven, my lord, I am innocent. Hugh stuttered, and Thor smiled, retrieved his dagger, and left. Make sure no one sees him here. He'll be targeted soon enough. As a friend, it's my responsibility to find him safe passage out of here. Castle Black. This is madness, what are you thinking? Tyrion all but shouted, seeing his brother and probably the only family he cherished going out to give away his life. Not if it's works. Jaime shrugged with a charming smile. You'll be freezing your balls off beyond the walls, searching for those things while not even knowing how to kill them. Works or not, this is maddest. If father knew this, Tyrion trail of as he figure that if his father knew, then it's most likely all the blame will be shifted onto him. Jaime Lannister in all his wisdoms one day woke up and decided to go to North and capture a White Walker of his own. What if he knew? He won't do nothing. In fact, this is the reason why I'm going out there, little brother. Father won't believe this children's tale until he has a proof, and that old bear is guarding that cellar like it was a gold mine. Let alone a body part we can't even get fart from that white. Jaime said, making Tyrion shut up. Sigh, we both know Jeor Mormont not gonna let us take any part of that undead to show father. Without proof, father won't believe even if it's me telling him. Ned Stark is a fool, he thinks that the king could help him. He should have learned by now that Capsule is in Debeth, there won't be any help from the Capsule. The only three places which help North right now are Hightower, Reach and us Lannisters. If can't convince father, then Sevens know when those undead fuckers will show up. If the wall falls, then we all are doomed, Jaime said with a little heat. You can't, we don't even know how to. Tyrion after a little while tried to convince his brother again, but Jaime shook his head. That foreigner captured one, do you think I can't do it? Since when it's competition? Tyrion said with frustration. Do you know what will happen to me if our dear father and sister learn that I didn't do anything while you go out there to alone to die? Tyrion said with irritation. I'm not gonna die, and I'm not alone either. I got professional help, Jaime said. He was actually going out there with Benjen and few more ranger to shout the area. As for our sister and father, here, give them this, they won't cause you any trouble, he said as he tossed 2 letters at Tyrion. Sometimes I appreciate Seven choose to gave me a bigger head than longer legs. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 21 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 23. Another night visitor. After a long day of hard work, sleep is the best. It's not just me, but Thor thinks the same, or else I wouldn't have kept enjoying sleep this much as I did back on Earth. The more time went on, the more I found myself becoming like Thor. I had this constant urge to smash something with my hammer. Strange, maybe, but I can't deny it, I like doing it. It was very obvious that I was changing bit by bit, becoming more like Thor. In many ways, it was a good thing. To survive here, I had to be more like him, but I didn't want to be completely like him. It's already strange how I'm not making a fuss about another entity taking control of my mind, making me like him. Maybe because I have already started to consider myself like Thor. Who knows? I just hope that there is still a little bit of me left by the end. Just as sleep was very close to claiming me, I suddenly felt a presence. It was very faint, but my senses picked it up. I all but shot open my eyes and bolted up, my hands instinctively finding my hammer before I turned toward the person who was standing in the shadows, coming into my room at night. "Who are you?" "Another royal assassin." I bolted out of bed and pointed Mjolnir at the man hiding his face in the shadows. Just 2 days ago, an assassin had come to kill me, and now here we are, another one. Cowards, all of them, killing a man in his sleep while hiding behind the shadows. I tried to control it, but my anger slightly leaked out in the way I was glaring at the man. "A man has not come to grant you the blessing of the many-faced god," replied the man as he stepped out from the shadows. He looked ordinary, but if what he said was anything to go by, then no one could tell how exactly he looked. Many-faced god. Out of all the faiths in both Westeros and Essos, this one was the most dangerous. All its followers were assassins who could change faces and kill anyone for the right price. A gift is what they call it, they say it's a blessing from their god. An annoyed look appeared on my face. I didn't like this kind of underhanded way, or maybe it was Thor's influence. "Only demons call killing a blessing. Yours is no god," I said with anger. "A man does not question the many-faced god. A man only follows what the many-faced god asks of him," he replied in a calm tone. That was another thing annoying about them, they talked funny like this for some reason. I just shook my head and glared at him, looking around but finding no one else but him. There was no need to talk sense to him. These followers of their faith don't listen to reason. Why are you here if not to give your so-called god's gift? A request. A man is imprisoned and needs freeing. Our god lead us to you, O champion of the storm god. Assist a man, and a man shall return a life for a life. Alright, that was even harder to understand than his earlier annoying talk. I pondered for a little before it finally clicked, he was talking about Jachan Hagar. But what is this nonsense about being the champion of the storm god? I have heard about the old gods, the Seven, the Lord of Light, even the horse god and the drowned god that those Dothraki and those plundering Greyjoys worship, but this was my first time hearing about this new god. For the time being, I didn't bother asking about it further or denying it. I was rather interested in the offer he was talking about. A life for a life. That could help me quite a bit, though I didn't like pulling underhanded tactics like those cowards hiding in shadows. However, maybe I could ask for something else. "I don't need a life, but I could use a name," I replied as I took out the dagger and showed it to him. "You might not have brought any gift for me, but before you, there was one." He had a face and a dagger. "Find out who sent him, and I'll think about your offer." The faceless man stood there, contemplating something before he asked. "No blessing, not even touching. You just bring the name, I'll prepare a gift for him myself." He thought a little more before finally nodding. "The god will consider helping a man, if a man brings him a name," he said. Quite a reversal of roles, but it was what it was. The god, now I was getting a little curious. How much did he know about me? The fact that he came to ask for my help was strange as it was, but maybe his talk about his god leading him wasn't a lie. "You have my word, Valar Morghulis," he nodded. "Valar Dohaeris," I nodded back. And just like that, he was gone. Sighing, I was ready to go back to sleep, but that was when I heard a system notification. Status. Godly Body, LVL1. Mjolnir, LVL1. Thunder, LVL1. Available upgrade points 1. Current ongoing quests. Final quest. Kill Night King. Main quest. Winter is coming. Let the North and by extension South know about the danger of White Walker. Ready North for the upcoming winter. Side quests. Wolf's Companion. Travel with Ned Stark and help him out. Protect Starks in the South. Revenge. Find and kill the person who sent the assassin after you. Tourney. Win the tourney and establish your valor. A man. Free the faceless man from the castle dungeons. I read and grumbled under my breath. More side quests. Part of the reason I accepted participating in the tourney and hadn't acted against Joffrey yet was because of this side quest. Well, I won't deny that I wanted to fight in the tourney myself. I might have done it even if I didn't get a quest for it. The quest was just another reason I accepted it. The urge to fight in this body for me was almost like a masturbation addiction from my last world. It's hard to control, so if I get to crack some skulls and get paid for it, then it's a welcome change. The upgrade point just made it a sweeter deal. As for acting against Joffrey, well, in that case, I did hold back because of the quest. The quest states that I have to find out who sent the assassin. This was strange. The system could easily give a quest to kill Joffrey or something, but nay. Something fishy was going on, and thus I held back. Whatever, got too much work to do tomorrow. I better get some sleep. You're sure about this, my lord? There are many eyes here, Jory asked as both he and Ned Stark came to the blacksmith's shop. Sir Hugh had given them crucial intel about what Jon Arryn was doing before he died. Out of all the people, he had come here often. So, Ned too wanted to check out why. He could have just sent Thor, but the last time he did, the man was beaten and bruised badly. Regarding the person he was about to talk to, he didn't want the same fate to befall him and thus kept Thor out of it. It was a little risky coming here. Thor had told him not to raise suspicions, but he had to know. And by the time he was done talking to the person, he was shocked and troubled. What did you find, my lord? Jory asked. King Robert's bastard. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 15 comments 0 vote. Chapter 24. In Heat. You're just a soldier, isn't it? You were never taught how to rule, Cersei spoke mockingly, seeing the man in front of her think that honor could save him. I was taught how to kill. Ned Stark didn't back down, saying it without looking away from the woman's eyes. So was I. Cersei just smiled and left the room with a flare, leaving Ned Stark even more certain that he was getting closer to unearthing something that would shake the realm. Cersei learned what Ned was up to these days from her spies. Everything was fine until Ned decided to visit Gendry at the blacksmith's shop. That's when one of her spies informed her of what was going on. Cersei was quick to figure out what Ned Stark was doing, and by no means would she let him do as he pleased. For her kids, Cersei could do anything, even if it came to killing, she would resort to it. As she came out of Ned Stark's room, a frustrated expression appeared on her face. This matter should have died with the death of Jon Arryn. Letting Robert take Stark as his hand was a mistake. She had so wanted her father to take the role, but alas, that pig of a king wouldn't listen to her. She was about to rush back to her chamber and get something nice to eat before thinking about how to deal with Ned Stark when she heard a man's voice. Usually, she wouldn't care, but she had heard this deep voice before. Only once, but she couldn't forget it even if she wanted to. Before she knew it, her legs were already moving toward where the sound came from. What she saw almost froze her on the spot. There was an incredibly handsome and muscular man doing pull-ups on some sort of makeshift rod. Bare-chested, every time he pulled himself up, his muscles moved like mountains shifting on the surface of the earth. He was sweating, the air in the room was stuffy and hot, and his scent filled the space. Cersei gulped. Unknowingly, her legs came a little closer. No matter how she tried, she couldn't take her eyes off that strong, muscular back, which felt like every muscle was made of iron. The man was doing a strange exercise that Cersei had no knowledge of, but she couldn't care less. All she wanted now was for him not to stop. The man she was staring at was no ordinary man. Thor immediately sensed someone behind him. He didn't stop immediately because he was in the middle of a set. Sensing no harm coming his way, he continued until he finally hit 1,000 pull-ups, then dropped down. As he turned back to see who it was, he saw the queen rubbing her neck like she had a bad sore. There was sweat on her forehead, and she looked slightly dazed. "How may I help you?" Thor asked, making Cersei immediately stop her wandering hand. Good thing she had only reached for her neck and thighs. Only after hearing his voice did she realize who this person was, the foreigner. And by the seven, he was magnificent. It might have been months of sexual tension without any relief, but she felt her insides getting hot and moist. There stood a tall, muscular, handsome god of a man, topless, sweat glistening on his body, looking directly at her like she was his prey. In reality, Thor was looking at her with confusion. What was she doing here? He had no idea, but he felt like she was looking at him strangely. "The seven have blessed you with a strong body," she suddenly spoke. It felt more like a threat coming from Cersei than a compliment. Did she know about his dealings? Thor paused and thought. Not as much as they have given you beauty. Which, in Thor's eyes, meant none, as the seven had nothing to do with his powers. "Do people often train like that where you come from?" she asked as she slowly walked closer, her face slightly tilted to the side, staring at him. Thor just nodded, trying to figure out what she was after. If she was here, there had to be a reason. They say strong warriors have marks, while exceptional ones have none. Cersei slowly raised her hand and stroked his arm. Thor, for his part, just stood there, keeping his eyes on her, still trying to decipher her intentions. She roamed around him, looking at every inch of him until her eyes fell on something she had almost forgotten. Her mind, high on lust, settled down upon seeing the mark that had concerned her so much in recent days. Wounds are indeed a warrior's pride, a mark that they lived to tell the tale while their opponent did not. "So, you're one of those exceptions, I presume." Cersei was now behind him, admiring his broad back while caressing it with her hands. When he wasn't looking, she took a deep breath of his masculine scent. Only the seven knew how much this was waking a primal fire inside her. It was getting unbearable. Her hand went up to slowly massage one of her breasts while another hand kept on tracing his back. There was heat building between her legs. She knew that with just one touch, she would be a watery mess. By the seven, she just wanted to claim him right now, order him to kneel before her, press into her until she couldn't move anymore. However, she had more important matters to sort out first. "Then what about this one?" she asked as she caressed the strange mark on his shoulder, reminding her of a past she never wanted to recall. "Birthmark," Thor replied. He was on guard against her. Though she had no visible weapons, he wouldn't put it past Cersei to use an underhanded trick on him. At his reply, Cersei paused, hesitant to ask another question. Her mind was in turmoil, constantly putting her in conflict. She had more questions, about his origins, his parents, that mark. Was there any chance that he was her son? Impossible as it may have sounded, that mark, she couldn't get it out of her mind. And yet, her body had a mind of its own. Her hands were massaging her breast while her breathing grew ragged. Her other hand was dangerously close to the junction between her legs. She knew that if she touched it, she wouldn't be able to stop herself. "Why is a handsome and strong man like you here alone? You should be in the company of fair maidens," she gulped and asked while forcing herself to tear her hand out of her dress and walk back in front of him. A man who can't control his own lust will only become a beast. A real man needs no more than one woman he calls his own, to share his bed, fortune, and life. Thor replied awkwardly. He was beginning to think her motives were something else entirely. Was she beautiful? Yes. Was she fuckable? Very much so. But by Odin's beard, he would not put himself anywhere near this crazy woman, even if she were the last woman alive in the 9 realms. There was no way he was falling for this vixen's act. However, his words did more harm than good. Hearing him, a genuine smile spread across Cersei's face. This felt like a smack in her husband's face. "Then maybe you should start finding that one. Don't hesitate to come over if you need any help. I'll be more than willing to provide all you need." She was now dangerously close, making Thor recoil slightly. He was very close to pushing her away. "No need. I'd rather not disturb you." Thor's eyes hardened as he said this in the coldest voice he could muster. It didn't work. If anything, it excited Cersei the wrong way. She suddenly felt an imposing aura from him, and it turned her on even more. "Nah, if it's you, then," she said, her finger tracing across his chest while she bit down on her lips. "Then, I'll allow it." She turned back. If Thor didn't know better, there was an extra sway in her hips as she exited the room, throwing one last sultry glance his way. Thor just stood there, his mind recalling her touch and her face. He was getting aroused. This was bad, really bad. He understood now what she was after, seduction. Why? He had no idea, but he wouldn't allow it. Train harder. Meditate more. Don't let her win, he muttered to himself. To the grind. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 31 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 25. The Lioness and the History Text. Cersei was having one of the worst hangovers she had ever experienced. Last night, she might have given her husband a run for his throne in drinking. I ran. She covered her face with both hands, half anger building up and half irritation boiling within her. She couldn't figure out what she wanted, and she had to get away from him. Her mind told her to find his identity. That mark on his back and her dead son's missing body were too coincidental. And her body, it wanted to forget about that dead child and birth a few more with the same man she doubted to be her son. Her lion, she thought of yesterday suddenly, and a big blush uncontrollably appeared on her face, immediately followed by a scowl. Yesterday, her body had been possessed by the maiden, or else she couldn't explain how she, the queen of the 7 kingdoms and one of the fiercest players of the game, ended up acting like a bitch in heat. Batting her lashes and ready to open her legs for that man like a street whore. What madness clouded her mind, only the 7 could tell, but as she recalled the state she was in yesterday, she couldn't help but feel the heat rising inside her again. Her legs involuntarily tightened. As if acting like a lovesick fool and almost begging that man to visit her wasn't enough, at least that's what she felt it looked like. She had been indecisive about what she wanted and had gotten away from there. But not before trying her damnedest to look more appealing in front of him, thinking that her charm would make Thor stop her from leaving. Even after returning to her room, she waited, expecting him to appear. That son of a bitch never came. All night, she couldn't sleep, tossing like a fish out of water. Trying to relieve herself only caused her urges to skyrocket. No matter whether it was her own fingers, a tool, or the tongue of a servant she ordered, none could satisfy her. She needed a man, a real man. But most men were smelly orcs. Maybe Lancel, she thought. He was also a Lannister and looked a little like Jaime, but then an image of Thor's muscular, broad back came to her mind, and she compared it to Lancel. She tightened her grip on the cup as a bigger scowl formed on her face. She was the queen, she had never compromised in her life, and Castle Rock would run dry of gold before she thought about doing it now. Just as Cersei was about to ask one of the servant girls to call for Thor, she heard Joffrey making noise again. On normal days, she would treat her lion as a 2-year-old and do whatever he wanted. However, today, she wasn't interested. She heard her son shouting about some man barging into his room last night. She wasn't sure whether to believe it or not. Even she had to admit that Joffrey wasn't the best when it came to behavior, but even his lies were getting worse. I want him dead. He must be the one who sent the faceless man to kill me. Joffrey shouted in a high-pitched voice. What? She just shook her head. Joffrey didn't even know that faceless men only took assassination missions and nothing else. Sighing, she went back to her thoughts about Thor. She wanted answers about him, his background, but she no longer wished to see him again. It felt humiliating to seek him out after he hadn't come. Oh, he'll come, I'll make sure of it. Her inner lioness roared, but for now, she planned to maintain her distance, or she might get all flustered and horny around him again. Never again. Thinking about it, she had only one option: try to gather whatever information she could through Sansa. Invite Sansa to lunch. Make sure you prepare something she likes, she ordered the same servant girl whose tongue had made her night bearable. Winterfell. No. But why? I'll be completely safe there. Mother, I have to go. I know something out there is calling me, Bran said, but even he didn't have much hope that his mother and brother would agree to let him go further north. Because it's dangerous. What are you thinking? That's not a playground, Bran, Catelyn said, irritation building up. Her second youngest hadn't been the same since waking up. Maester Luwin said it was a miracle of both the old gods and the new that the boy had woken up at all. She had much to be grateful for, but he was different. No longer running around, playing, climbing. He was calm, almost always buried in books like he had found some lost secret in them. And then, suddenly, he came up asking to go north. I'm not going there to play. I told you, I had a dream about, Bran was about to say, but Catelyn stopped him midway. You saw a three-eyed raven. So what of it? It's all because you've been reading those children's stories and history books with fantasy tales of magic. It's gotten into your head, Catelyn replied, cutting Bran off. Bran sighed. It had been hours since he had tried to change his mother's mind, but to no avail. He knew this would happen, so he turned to his brother Robb. Technically, Robb was the current warden of the North, so if he ordered it, Bran could go. However, that possibility was unlikely. And Bran was right. Robb just looked at him with amusement before turning his face away. He considered this one of his brother's many unreasonable demands. Bran wasn't like this before, but recently, things had been different with him. Mother, enough. You'll be going back to your room and staying here. We shall discuss this no more, Catelyn said, a headache forming. The Seven only knew what had happened to her child. It was almost like he had become a completely different person overnight. Bran knew better than to argue anymore and, with a dejected look, went back to his room. Just as he was making his way back, he suddenly saw a big man sitting outside with an ugly expression. He was big, not as big as Hodor, but still big enough. He had bandages wrapped around his side and chest while half of his face was burned. The Hound. Bran gulped, seeing him there. He had heard that the Hound wasn't in any condition to go back with the King's entourage to King's Landing. His wounds weren't life-threatening, but they had left him pretty hurt. As Bran looked at the Hound did the same. But just as simply, he ignored the little lord and went back to brooding. Bran's eyes went to Sandor's wounds, and he remembered the big, handsome man Sansa had been talking about non-stop. The hammer, he muttered, and this slight mutter was immediately caught by Sandor. What did you say? He asked with a little growl. Your wound. Thor did it, right? Bran gulped but asked nonetheless. He had to know. So what of it? Sandor growled even more. He didn't want to be reminded of that cursed hammer. That hammer, and the one who wielded it, both. It had put him in bed with pain and no wine for a month. All he wanted to do right now was stay away from that man. Sandor knew, from the damage his body had suffered even with armor on, that man was no less of a monster than his older brother. He might have looked like one of those pretty Reach knights, with a face prettier than most women in the Seven Kingdoms, but he was a monster. Do you remember that hammer? How it felt? Bran suddenly asked, making him even more irritated. Why do you care? Sandor asked with irritation. Bran, upon getting this question, took out the book he was carrying and started turning the pages frantically before opening one and showing it to the Hound. That's the hammer. The Hound at first just wanted to avoid the sort of kid, but seeing the almost same-looking hammer in that book his heartbeat quickened. I found it while reading about the fates of the Westeros and Essos. It doesn't explain much, but it say, when the sea chirped and the sky crackled, that when the champion of the storm descended to slew the kraken, he called forth thunder from heavens, his hammer crack earth. He flew off one day and then, Bran read the passage with a strange look on his face. And what? The Hound, still glaring daggers at the image of the hammer, asked. A little interested at what this story was about. Bran pursed his lips, and continue. Then the dance begin. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got more than 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 23 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 26, Jousting. Thor, here, came a familiar voice, and I saw Sansa, beautifully dressed, waving her hands to call me. Ah, my lady, you shouldn't smile so graciously. What if some lord falls for that charm? The realm can't withstand another Harrenhal, I said, giving her and the scowling Septa beside her a smile before sitting beside her. Sansa's face turned bright red. The poor girl failed hard to counter the blush creeping up to her face. It's always fun to tease others, especially beautiful girls. Why should I fear anyone? I have a strong, handsome knight to protect me. You'll protect me, right, Sir Thor? Sansa pushed her blush down and asked with a coy smile. At least she tried to act like a confident young woman. It was cute but not convincing, seeing her barely looking into my eyes before the blush returned. Maybe she was trying to model after the queen. She's spending an awfully long time with her lately. This kind of makes me worry a little about her. I'm no knight, but rest assured, as long as I am here, no harm shall come to you. You have my word, I said with a little smile, to which the girl blushed and put her head down, avoiding my eyes. I avoided the glare the septa was throwing at me, Arya on the side sneakily trying to lift Mjolnir and failing hard, and looked away to where both the king and queen were seated. But the moment I looked there, both my eyes and Cersei's connected. She was looking directly at me. I was trying to maintain a low profile, and yet she found me. What is she up to? I tried keeping tabs on her after that day but couldn't find much besides that recently she made a big fuss about something. It's been days. Start the damn tourney already before I piss myself, shouted King Robert, who sat beside her with a cup of wine in his hand, face completely flushed. I really don't know what these people were thinking, making him the king of all people. I could only blame the Westerosi people and their infatuation with bloodlines. Father, in this case, was correct, most men are retarded. Quote. Damn, now I'm even calling him my father. Our memories are mixing to the point I can't distinguish between which ones were mine and which were given to me. Oh well, there is no reason to think about it anymore. I'm Thor now anyway. Back to Robert, he became the king not because he won the war. He wasn't the only faction in the war, nor was he the one leading the rebellion mainly. He became king because somewhere in the past, his ancestor married a Targaryen, giving him a few drops of dragon's blood, for which people in this continent are ready to bow down and lick his foot. Ned Stark would have been a better king, not very good at the game and highly vulnerable without much power in the south or alliances for that matter, but a good king nonetheless. I wonder if I ever go to the MCU, could I become the king of Asgard? I couldn't help but muse. After a long wait, finally, the day of the tourney arrived. My hands felt like itching to crack open some skulls. This was the primal warrior urge inherited by Thor. However, it turns out that the first part of the tourney was jousting. Upon the king's call, two people came forward. Both were knights who I didn't know, wearing handsome armor and sitting on top of their steeds with long lances in their arms, ready to start jousting. I had no interest in that. It was nothing but a ridiculous performance for the audience, not a real battle. I didn't even have any memories of Thor doing jousting. Fortune was on my side that I wasn't in this part of the tournament. Earlier, I said I was taking part in jousting to Sir Hugh just because I wanted to grab his attention, but no, I wouldn't have done it even if that fat king ordered me to do it. As for Sir Hugh, my friend wasn't part of this tourney after hearing my potent advice about the potential danger to his life. There are people already looking for him in King's Landing. Surely Cersei didn't want to leave behind loose ends after knowing Ned Stark was digging into the credibility of her children. I told that fool not to expose himself, but Honorable Eddard Stark doesn't fear anything. He went behind my back and let Cersei know what he was up to. Now he was a target. I had Hugh hidden for the time being. I can't say whether the mountain killing Hugh in the show was an accident or a planned assassination, but I didn't want to take any chances. I still have a use for my friend after all. As I thought about Cersei, I slowly tilted my head to see she was still looking in my direction. Odin knows what was going on inside the head of that vile woman now. Seduction didn't work on me, so what's she gonna do next, huh? While I was distracted, the first jousting match ended. One of the knights was dismounted on the first run. I still don't see the appeal of these games, but hearing the claps from others, I'd say this world seriously needs some entertainment options. A new pair of knights came forward, and finally, I knew this one. A man in white armor rode on his horse, holding a red rose, which he carried all the way towards us and gave to Sansa. Flower Knight, that's what they call them here, a term mostly used for knights who have never seen real war and mostly show off. This identity has long been attached to the Knights of the Reach. The man gave me a look. I couldn't recall who this person was, but I saw him staring at me a little longer than I was comfortable with before he turned back. What is that? Arya suddenly pointed in the other direction. I saw a big man riding a horse in complete black armor. He was big, even bigger than me, and I was 6 feet 2 inches. He looked almost 7 feet. That's Sir Gregor Clegane, also known as the Mountain Who Rides. A voice came from the side, and then I saw one of the most dangerous men in this game. Peter Bale, why do they call you Littlefinger? Arya was faster to address him. Arya, both Sansa and the Septa chided. Don't be rude. I don't mind at all. I was very small when I was a child, and I came from a small place called the Fingers. So, you see, it's an exceedingly clear nickname, Baelish addressed. It's even more remarkable that you raised your station despite your birth, I said, drawing his attention away from both Sansa and Arya. This man was one of the most dangerous players of the game, so much so that I wouldn't mind killing him even if I had no other reason besides saving myself from the future chaos he could bring. Ah, you must be Thor. It's a pleasure. I just returned the greeting and then avoided him. He reminded me too much of Loki. I heard Littlefinger explaining how the Flower Knight, whose name was Loras Tyrell, was cheating. His steed was a mare and in heat. It was affecting Gregor's horse. I don't quite remember this small bit of information from the show, but I do remember the Tyrell name. Marjorie Tyrell was his little sister. Interesting. The first and second runs both were not good for the Mountain. His horse was giving him trouble, and on the last run, Loras was dismounted him. In anger, Gregor cut open his own horse's neck. Power without restraint, not a warrior but a berserker. I just shook my head. I knew he was despicable, but losing control of his own emotions like this in the open was too much. But then something even more ridiculous happened. He went on to attack Loras. The crowd started to make noise and shout for help, someone to save Loras. I remember this from the TV show. Shouldn't Sandor be here too? Oh, XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got more than 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 21 comments 0 vote. Chapter 27. Break the Mountain. Clang. Gregor almost felt his sword being torn from his grip. The impact of whatever had struck his blade was immense, making him stagger 2 steps back. His hands felt slightly numb, and he was sure that if he hadn't been holding on tightly enough, the sword would have flown out of his grasp. Seems like the knightly code is lost on you. Attacking from behind, even if it's an enemy, is considered dishonorable, let alone in a friendly competition such as this, I said as I raised Mjolnir towards the Mountain, who looked at me with a mix of shock and disbelief. No, you must save Thor, or the Mountain will kill him. Sansa turned to her father, who had just recently arrived and sat beside her. Grabbing onto his arm, she pleaded desperately. Hey, it's fine. Ned Stark looked at his daughter with a complicated expression, then turned his gaze to Thor. Maybe letting this handsome man guard his daughters wasn't the best idea. Both Cersei and Robert, watching from the side, were intrigued by the fight. Robert, more than anyone, wanted to see Thor in action. Cersei, too, but for entirely different reasons. Other lords and ladies who had seen Thor for the first time murmured among themselves. Is he a Lannister? 7 hells, he's handsome. Did I see that correctly? He pushed back Gregor. The Mountain took a few seconds to regain his balance, but his anger only grew. Gripping his greatsword tightly, he charged at the man who had dared to stop him. Seeing the brute force attack coming, I easily predicted its trajectory and dodged with ease. All that training, trying to adapt to Thor's fighting style, had done me a lot of good. Surrender now, and you have my word that you won't be harmed, I said casually, effortlessly fidgeting with Mjolnir in my hand like it was a toy. When no reply came and he launched another attack, I sighed. Very well, you don't have my word. Honestly, I had been hoping for this outcome. Get out of here, I told the Flower Knight before turning back to Gregor, who was already swinging at me. Gregor was strong, but he lacked the agility of other knights. As his greatsword came down, I swung Mjolnir back, colliding the hammer directly against his blade once again. Clang! The sound of iron striking iron rang out, sparks flew, and just like that, Gregor's attack was not only blocked but he was once again thrown off balance by the sheer force of the impact. I, on the other hand, barely felt the blow, holding the heavier weapon. Taking advantage of the opening when his front was mostly exposed, I moved in with lightning-fast reflexes and raised my leg. Ha! A powerful Spartan kick sent Gregor tumbling backward until he lost his balance entirely and fell to the ground. A slight dent was visible on his armor where I had struck him. I'd advise you to stay down. You're only unharmed because I wanted to test that kick on someone. Or perhaps you're still alive because you're wearing armor. I said with a little smile. I had really wanted to try that out after last time, when the Hound had wanted to do the same to him. He had dodged, of course, but the Hound's brother wasn't as lucky. By the 7, did you see that? Who is that man? He looks like a Lannister. But even for Lannister standards, he's handsome. Ned Stark watched with a complicated look on his face. He didn't mind Thor being that strong. In fact, he was relieved to have someone that capable guarding his daughters. However, there was also the fact that Thor was the only person to have fought an undead. He had said it was easy enough, and now Ned was beginning to understand why, and that wasn't good for the realm. Not everyone is Thor after all. Will North survive? Ha 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 ha, I knew that lad was a warrior. Oh, you should have seen me when I was his age, cracking skulls and fucking whores. I would have broken that mountain with a single strike. Ha ha ha. King Robert, instead of stopping the fight, ended up laughing heartily. Cersei, on the side, kept her eyes locked on Thor, refusing to blink. Her mouth was slightly parted, and her lower lip slipped between her teeth. Good, no one was paying attention to her. It was becoming unbearable to suppress these urges now. Once again, the crowd broke into murmurs at the incredible feat Thor had accomplished. To throw the mountain back with just a single kick, beating him in sheer strength, it was unheard of. Even Gregor was stunned by what had just happened. Since childhood, this was the first time he had lost in terms of strength. Anger spread across his face, and he struggled to get up under the weight of his armor. "Kill him," shouted someone. I had no idea who, but the whiny, high-pitched voice was familiar. From the side, Cersei glanced at her son in confusion. Why did her lion want Thor dead? She had no idea, but this was one wish he couldn't have. That man was hers. I simply waited. Attacking a fallen enemy was beneath me. While my body was still at level 1, he might have been able to provide some competition. I would have upgraded my body long ago, but I held back. Getting stronger without learning how to fully control that power would be detrimental. After mastering the full extent of level 1, I knew that very few could challenge me. With my current strength, it was apparent that either I didn't know my MCU well or those Marvel guys underestimated Thor's real power. Then again, what could you expect from a company that turned someone like the Hulk into comedic relief? Sigh. Anyway, I'd stay at level 1 for the time being and learn the ropes. I had a feeling that once I leveled up, it would be pretty hard to find a real challenge to test myself. Gregor got up and immediately rushed at me, sword raised high. I simply sidestepped the obvious attack, pivoting my body to the right. Then, forcefully stopping my rotation, I twisted my body back to the left, gripping Mjolnir tightly with both hands. With a strong swing, I smashed my hammer against his sword once again. Though this time, I couldn't put much strength into the attack due to the lack of proper leverage in that quick swing. A loud sound rang throughout the jousting ring, and everyone watched as the mountain's greatsword shattered in half. He staggered back once more. By the 7, who is this man? I heard he's from the north. Since when did northerners start looking like that? A maiden said, dazed. I knew he'd win. Thor is strong. Arya puffed her chest out proudly as if she had predicted the outcome. Sansa, meanwhile, only saw the mountain's downed figure for a second before her eyes found Thor again, another blush creeping onto her face. I, on the other hand, sighed as I looked at the broken sword in Gregor's hands. I had hoped to prolong the fight to test out Thor's different combat moves, but alas, all good things must come to an end. There is no honor in fighting an unarmed opponent, I said, slowly tossing Mjolnir aside, surprising everyone, including Gregor, who looked at me in confusion. Though, I wouldn't mind settling this man to man. I had been meaning to punch someone so badly. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got more than 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story, then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 33 comments 0 vote. Chapter 28. Escape from Winterfell. I was expecting the fight to continue with the mountain. Fighting was fun, even more than I anticipated it to be. Though, maybe because I was winning. However, the king stopped the fighting after that. You'll get all the skulls to crack tomorrow. Gosh, I feel my blood rushing, seeing finally someone using a hammer in a tourney. The king laughed and patted my shoulder, to which I just remained indifferent. After that, we took our leave from the jousting. Good, because I wasn't looking forward to meeting those high-born lords coming to socialize with me. Bunch of leeches, all of them. If they were expecting me to lick their asses just like everyone else, then forget about 7, even 70 of those gods wouldn't prevent those asses from lighting up in a fight. Why can't I use a hammer like you? I can't even lift it. Arya asked with a pouty face as I escorted the girls back to their rooms. Believe me, child, you're not the only one incapable of lifting it, I said, but saw Arya looking at Mjolnir with hot eyes. Apparently, she too wanted to break swords with a hammer. You're learning the sword dance from your new dancing teacher, right? Focus on that, it will serve you well. I sighed. Never seen a more headstrong girl than her. Even Sif back in Asgard was better. Sif had to work extra hard to get recognized as a warrior, being a girl and all, but she did it. I'm sure Arya would find her path soon enough as well. She might be the only Stark in the entire pack whom I wasn't worried about. Others, though, they were a troublesome bunch. I looked at Sansa, who was walking a little behind us with Septa, occasionally glancing at me. The girl was too green for this place, and so was Ned Stark. Can I use a hammer when I grow up? Arya asked with hopeful eyes. Sure, as long as you grow up big and strong. For that, you have to eat more, train well, and rest plenty. Remember the Turtle Hermit way. Turtle Hermit? Arya was confused. Ha ha ha, never mind, just make sure you focus on your dancing lessons. I laughed and kept going. The king has called me to dinner tonight for some reason. I have to find something good to wear. I thought of skipping it. However, there is one person whom I wish to meet at this gathering. Winterfell. The room door opened, and a small foot stepped out into the darkness of night. It would be very soon that dawn would break, and then he'd have enough light to travel. However, if he wished to leave Winterfell successfully, then he had to leave now. Bran looked at his room and then at the castle entirely. Hesitation was inside him, but he knew that he had to do this. No one believed him when he told them he saw things. He saw the wall and what was beyond it. He saw a three-eyed raven and found himself trapped inside some animal every time he dreamed. But no one believed him. Bran himself had no proof to show them. However, he knew that these things he saw were not just dreams. Only by going north could he get answers to his questions. However, it was obvious that no one would let him, so he had no other option but to act on his own. Leaving Winterfell under the cover of night was his only way out. He was ready, from enough food to a small weapon in case the need arose, he packed everything. He even stole a pony for himself from Winterfell so he wouldn't have to walk all the way to the wall. But hesitation was stopping his legs from taking another step out of the castle. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, and with a determined look, finally took the step out. Going north alone would be very dangerous, and Bran knew that, but he had to go. Soon, dawn broke, and there was enough light for him to continue his journey. It will be a while before everyone in Winterfell finds out. I should hurry. Pressing his lips together, he increased his speed. This time around, the effect of the three-eyed raven was much stronger on Bran for some reason. Maybe it was partly because Bran wasn't hurt, so he was strong enough that the three-eyed raven showed him more, or just the simple fact that the three-eyed raven saw the future changing into something he couldn't seem to control, and thus he needed his successor with him as soon as possible. Bran, though, only knew one thing: he had to hurry. The reason was unknown, but the voice in his mind told him that he had to hurry. Things had changed. What things and how they had changed, he had no idea, but those few words from the dreams didn't let him sleep easy. He had to go, find out what called him and why. However, just as he was making his way north, he heard movement around him. Sounds that startled him. "Who's there?" Bran asked. The sun wasn't high enough to completely light up the forest. In the darkness, he heard many voices, and he knew one thing: no animal up here in the north made that sound. He put more pressure on the pony to walk faster. However, that was when he saw the bushes moving, and his eyes widened. He saw a bunch of people with ragged clothing closing in on him with weapons in their hands. Wildlings. Bran recognized them in an instant. Only the wildlings dressed like that up in the north. But how come they are here, this close to Winterfell? His heart suddenly set in panic before he gave the pony's reins a hard tug, making it start galloping the other way around. "After him! Don't let him escape!" one of the wildlings shouted. Bran was already bolting out of the forest the other way around. He was going in the opposite direction from where he was supposed to be, but he had no option. If he were to fall into the wildlings' hands, only the old gods knew what would happen to him. So he pushed his pony even more. The pony wasn't fast enough, but the people chasing him were on foot, so Bran was still in a better situation. But not for long. While they indeed couldn't capture him, they could attack him from a distance. They didn't care about some lord's son dying more than their own presence being known to the said lord. One of them notched an arrow and hit the poor pony, making Bran fall down, and the pony let out a painful scream. No, Bran was hurt but still rose to his feet to run. He knew he couldn't let them catch him. This would not only endanger his life but also involve his family if those wildlings knew who he was. Minutes of running felt like hours for the little boy before he was out of breath. The wildlings were closing in on him, and he couldn't hide with his ragged breathing in hopes that they wouldn't find him. So, behind a tree, he hid from them. He felt them coming closer and was just trying to keep his breathing under control so they wouldn't hear him. "Find the boy, he has to be here," shouted one of the men. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Got more than 5 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 29 comments 0 vote. Chapter 29, Little Feast. I'm Thor Odinson. It's a pleasure to meet you. I smiled as I took the hand of the little princess who approached me with a big smile on her face. I'm Myrcella. I saw you fighting the mountain. How did you do that? Myrcella asked, her expression full of curiosity. Can I get strong like you? Beside her, I saw the little boy, Tommen, who would be king after Robert Baratheon, because the 9 realms would burn before I let that monster Joffrey sit on the throne. They were Cersei's children, but unlike Joffrey, they turned out to be pretty decent. More than anything, they were innocent children, and I wanted no harm to come to them. Of course, you can get strong. Just make sure to eat your fill and train every day. I smiled and turned around. Currently, I was sitting at a small feast the king had thrown, inviting only some of the most important figures in the capital. Heimdall may know why the children were here when their supposed father was getting his hands full with beer and a whore's breast. I swear, this age wasn't very good at child protection, or child raising, for that matter. Ha ha ha, where is he? Thor, get in here. The king shouted, his voice booming, his face flushed. No idea what he wanted now, but I wasn't very interested in talking with anyone here. No, actually, there was one. He was the reason I even bothered to show up. Ha ha ha, here's our warrior. Robert laughed as I approached, and for the first time since I'd been here, I saw him pull away from the swollen ass of the girl beside him. I see you're enjoying yourself. Drinking and fucking are the only joys I have left in life. But you just reminded me there used to be another one. Gods bless your hammer, boy. Seeing you break down the mountain today almost made me feel like the day I crushed that dragon spawn's chest. So you better believe I'm enjoying this. Robert laughed again. But what about you? Why is there no drink in your hands? I don't like drinking before a fight. Why, can't handle your liquor, boy? I used to complete barrels before I even considered entering a battlefield. I did that once. An entire army later, I remembered I was supposed to wait for my own. Ha ha ha, you know your words. Here, forget about fighting and enjoy, drink. Robert grabbed another cup with the same hand he'd had inside that servant's skirt just now and shoved it toward me. Nah, I don't think so. I shook my head. Not that I hated drinking, but I was trying not to get addicted, and by Odin, it was the toughest fight I had faced since I came here. Drink. Your king commands it. Robert's earlier smile faded as he spoke with authority. I looked at the cup, then back at Robert with a smile before placing the cup back down. You're not my king. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice. What did you say? Robert's voice rose, and suddenly, the atmosphere changed as everyone looked our way. I also saw a few of the guards from earlier tensing. Did I stutter? I glared at him, locking eyes. The tension grew until Robert finally broke eye contact. Ha 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 ha, I like you, a real man, not like those ass-licking cunts. Ha ha ha, fine, no drinks before fighting. But what about getting yourself a good lass? When I was your age, I had fucked girls from the north to Dorne. Robert grinned, taking another sip. Ha ha ha, women here don't suit my taste much. Back home, I've got a few, goddesses all of them I tell you. They keep me away from enjoying my fights too much. At least that's how people know I'll be back, eventually. I smirked. Or you're too enchanted by that hammer of yours. Bloody never seen you walking without it. Don't tell me you take it to take a shit too. Robert laughed, but my smile stiffened. This wasn't the first time Thor had heard this, and I didn't like the teasing others gave him in his younger years. His infatuation with the hammer really was a little too much. I kind of inherited that feeling in memory. It wasn't all Thor either. I was a big fan of Mjolnir back on Earth. But at least my case was far better than Thor's. I just carried it everywhere because, at level 1, it couldn't fly up to me and I'm the only one who can lift it. And you can't expect it to fly to me, can you? I'd be 6 feet under by now if I didn't take it everywhere I go. A warrior should be ready at all times. A weapon should be an extension of their body. Ha, horseshit. You think my boy, who doesn't even have a hint of muscle in him, failed to lift that thing, and you can trick me? Put the hammer down, let me show you how to lift a hammer. Robert slammed his cup down and smirked. Seemed like he had wanted to try using Mjolnir for a long time but hadn't gotten a chance until now. You sure? Your subjects might not appreciate their king sprawled on the ground, unable to lift a hammer. I smiled. Nonsense. Just put the metal down, and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, how about a bet, just like your son? My smile widened. Bet, okay, out with it already. You win, and I'll do whatever you ask, so long as it's in my power. I win, and you'll do one thing I wish. Simple enough. Done. You'll make a fine knight at my court. For starters, I'll have you fuck for 10 hours and drink 10 barrels of rum, in front of me. Robert grinned. Ah, I'm almost tempted to lose. Alas, I'm not the hammer, and it's the hammer that chooses, King Robert. It's the hammer that chooses. God, I wanted to add, but no, let's keep this spoiler-free a little longer. Robert just spat and bent down to pick up the hammer. I was already coming up with things I could ask from the king. Robert failed spectacularly, and more laughter followed. Soon, this became a game while I kept an eye on my surroundings. For some reason, I didn't see Cersei here. Heimdall knows what she's up to, good for me though. I kept talking with the king until I finally found the person I was looking for. Lord Varys, may I have a word? Next morning. What do you mean I have to wear armor? I asked, irritation in my tone. It's mandatory to wear armor, my lord, the man who had come to deliver this news only minutes before my much-anticipated fight said with a hint of reluctance. Why did no one tell me this? I hadn't prepared any armor for myself. My apologies, my lord, but without armor, we can't allow you, it's the king's rule. He almost blurted it out, and seeing my glare, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. Sigh, fine, let me try whatever armor you have in stock right now. We don't have any, my lord. His face turned ugly. His instincts probably told him staying here wasn't very safe. Damn, I sat down, irritation boiling inside me, until my eyes fell on Mjolnir, all shiny and majestic looking. Then something clicked. Well, I might as well give it a try. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Get up to 10 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond. 20 comments 0 vote. Chapter 30. Armor Up. Crackle. The sky crackled, and strong winds blew, putting a damper on everyone's mood who came to see good fighting in this tourney. This was the second day of the tourney, and a battle royale was about to take place today. 7 hells, of all times, this accursed storm had to hit this bloody city today. King Robert cursed as he gulped down another drink in anger. He was already frustrated about not getting to fight in the tourney, his friend had talked him out of it. Nobody will hit the king, he said. Robert scoffed. He wanted to fight so much, especially after seeing Thor fighting with his hammer yesterday. But there was truth in his friend's words, there were not many who would dare to hit him. So, he reluctantly gave up fighting. But if that wasn't enough, suddenly the climate changed. It was bright and sunny just a few minutes ago, and now it felt like a storm was about to hit King's Landing. Shizam mmmmmm. Suddenly, a lightning bolt fell somewhere far in the nearby woods, making everyone waiting for the tourney to start flinch, now having second thoughts about staying there any longer. But the king wasn't having it. He announced the fighting to start. And just as time went on, the black clouds in the sky lightened up, only slightly, but it was an improvement. In a big gladiator-style ring, knights and fighters from all over the 7 kingdoms who had come to participate in the tourney entered. There were many knights with their handsome faces and shiny armor, but many waited for one face to appear. A particular blonde whom many expected to win them big gold. After learning that he was participating, many high lords and ladies placed their bets on Thor. However, the person they were waiting for was nowhere to be seen. Almost all the participants had entered the fighting ring, but Thor wasn't there. "Where is he? Did you see him?" Arya stood up in her chair to find her favorite blonde, thinking that it was her height preventing her from seeing him. "Arya, come down from there. He'll be here." Ned Stark sighed, seeing his younger daughter being troublesome again. Looking at his older one, he found she was no better either. The lass was biting down on her teeth like she hadn't eaten anything in years. "Where is Thor?" King Robert grumbled, not seeing the person he was waiting to see fight in the ring. Cersei, on the side, was the same. She usually came for appearance's sake and quickly took her leave from any tourney unless her brother was involved, but today was different. She was here to see Thor's fight. She had learned that last night her pig of a husband had invited the man to his small feast. She wished she could have been there, but alas, she had to tie up some loose ends. Pycelle had finally found something about that whore's location, the one who had taken her child. The merchant who had helped her out of the city in his cart was brought in by Pycelle and other guards. He confirmed that the boy she had with her had blonde hair and blue eyes. Though how much of what he said was truth and how much was just to save his own head from being on a pike the next morning was unsure. However, she would find out soon enough. She immediately sent men to the small village where that woman had taken her child. Soon, the truth would be in front of her. The crowd was starting to get bored from waiting when suddenly a strong wind blew, almost making everyone cover their eyes. The wind rushed directly to the entrance of the circle, where many finally saw someone coming out. Just as the first step of the man they had been waiting for came out, a thunderous sound shook the sky, as if the heavens were welcoming the person who had just arrived. Then the sky lit up, bathing the man in light that some might even call holy. "What is he wearing?" Ned Stark's eyes narrowed, and others did the same. They saw Thor step out in an armor they had never seen in Westeros. It was an intricate design between leather and metal. Multiple metal plates were attached to his armor. But what made both Ned and Robert even more astonished was the mail he was wearing. It was no normal chainmail, it was like the iron was engraved into his skin itself. Even with the armor, they could see the contours of his big arms. His long blonde hair was tied up this time, letting only a few strands flow, giving him an almost princely look. And if that wasn't enough to grab attention, he had a big red cape behind him that floated in the strong wind, making his physique, combined with that armor and handsome face, almost godlike. "Apologies, my armor needed cleaning," he said with a brilliant smile, and Ned heard his daughter next to him gasp. Is she blushing? Well, he couldn't blame her. Let alone her, he doubted even her mother would blush seeing this man like this here. And he was right. Almost all the girls present felt their hearts leap out of their chests when they saw the charming prince in such handsome armor, which seemed like it was specially made for him. "Ah, Thor is so handsome." Little Myrcella blushed slightly before turning to her mother to share her thoughts. "Right, mother." However, no response came. She found her mother was in a daze. "Mother, mother," Myrcella shouted, finally bringing Cersei out of her dazed state. "What?" She looked at her daughter with a glare. "You're drooling." Myrcella pointed at her mother's face with a giggle. "What?" Robert Baratheon saw the handsome, godlike face of the teenager in front of him with slight irritation. The boy reminded him of himself too much. 7, he even looked a little like him, to the point where he might have mistaken him for one of his bastards. Then how come he's so handsome? He remembered himself not having a face like that when he was young. An irritated glare was shot at Thor right then. He wasn't alone, though. Many sent envious looks at him. "If I had this bastard's face, would I ever have had to pay for whores? Women from all 7 kingdoms would have flown with their legs open like wings to land on my cock." He muttered under his breath. He wasn't in the best of moods, seeing how he lost the bet with Thor yesterday. He swore to the 7, the force he applied yesterday to lift that hammer was enough to unplug a dragon's tail, but that hammer didn't budge an inch. Not only he, but none were able to lift it, none other than the owner himself. He had the gall to flaunt it by tossing the hammer in the air and effortlessly catching it with his fingers. With bloody fingers. Sorcery, he was sure of it. But he lost nonetheless. The seven only knew what the boy wanted to ask of him, he hadn't voiced it yet. Still seeing women and men alike gushing over the boy, he shouted in irritation. Enough of it. Have none of you seen a pretty boy before? Start the damn fight already before I put him in a whorehouse for you all to test out. He would be disappointed to know that there were some who might actually like that idea. I hated to use the upgrade point this early before figuring out which attribute would be best to upgrade, but seeing their reactions, I believe it was worth it. I really like Mjolnir for this reason. Besides all its fighting capabilities, the hammer also gives its user armor when necessary. Good for me that level 2 Mjolnir was able to do so. This was the same armor Thor had in the second money. I believe out of all the armor that was the best. I had to go out of the crowded area to bring down the lightning, though, or else it wouldn't work. That's why I got late. It's a bummer not being able to test how strong I would be at level 1 across all attributes, but this is also good. I looked at the knights in their full plate armor, staring at me with strange expressions. It wasn't just my different armor, it was the cape they were looking at. I thought the cape was a little too much, but why not? Come on, please don't disappoint me too bad. XXX. I'll be slowly adding additional chapters in my Patreon. Get up to 10 additional chapters in Patreon. If you like the story then please consider supporting me. Patreon.com/kamidemond.